Welcome back to the Asians Represent podcast, the Emmy Award-winning series that explores Asian representation in games media. My name is Daniel, and I'm one of the co-hosts of this show, and I'm joined by one of my other co-hosts, Jeremy, and one of our very, very, very incredible Discord mods, Kat, who has also appeared on episodes of the podcast. We are actually not going to be talking about a game. We're going to be playing a game for this episode of Asians Represent. This will probably be a two-parter. And we're actually going to be playing a game made by Jeremy. I'm going to pass it off to you, Jeremy, so you can explain what Mappa Mundi is, because we've talked about it on Asians Represent. We've talked about it on No Dice, No Problem, but we haven't done a proper episode on it. So we'll do a proper episode in the future, breaking down like the system and the inspirations. But for this special episode of Asians Rep, we're going to be playing it. So
yes,
what is Mappa Mundi? Let's do it.
Yeah, so I've talked about this before with you, Daniel, but Mappa Mundi, I'm holding up a pre-release copy of the book right now. This is what we call an exploration and ecology RPG. Mappa Mundi is a game where the characters take on the role of biologists, researchers, naturalists, kind of like David Attenborough of the wilds. And your job is to go out into the wilderness, explore different environments, and study the actions of gigantic monsters instead of roaring at them and flinging yourself into combat. This is a non-violent game. Your characters cannot die. The fail state of this game is not death. And this is a game that prides itself on trying to make exploration interesting and helping you as players uncover the mysteries of a world that's just recently recovered from the brink of a cataclysmic event. So in this particular adventure that I will be running for you guys today, it's called Root and Branch, and it takes place in one of our 10 regions. It's a region vaguely based off of medieval France to kind of give that sort of traditional, automatically identifiable fantasy feel. And we're going to be diving right in. I've given you guys two pre-generated characters. We have Daniel playing the role of the archivist, and we have Kat playing the role of the diviner. Our game has 4 character classes, or licenses, as we call them. The archivist, the diviner, the fixer, and the guardian. We don't have enough players, because we're straddling 3 time zones right now, to join us in for the fixer and the guardian. But this game is very flexible, works well with 2 people or even just 1 player. And so we have an archivist and a diviner on the team right now. Okay, so I guess I'll take you guys through the character sheet, and that way I can explain the concepts and the rules of the game very quickly. Long story short, everyone in this game is a graduate of the Mappa Mundi Institute. Okay, the Mappa Mundi Institute is an international organization that exists on our continent of Evasu, which is sort of analogous to medieval Eurasia. Okay, and your job as a graduate of this institute is to explore the wilderness and chronicle the behaviors of monsters, which is why all of you guys, you players, are chroniclers, and I am the narrator, the GM of this game. We call it the narrator. Okay, what do you know about the world immediately? 100 years ago, there was a cataclysmic event called the flux. Okay, weather patterns around the world went completely out of whack. Traversal between different countries was completely cut off, and the cultures and histories of the world were locked away from each other. All people could really do was bunker down in their respective parts of the world and observe these majestic monsters in the wilderness who are said to be agents of fate. Fate is a big presence in our world. And these monsters, they seem to be able to travel in between various regions. They weren't beholden to the strange weather that was affecting the world. And this state lasted for about 100 years. The flux has most recently ended, and the world is open again, and travel between different countries is finally starting once more. But as a result of 100 years of seclusion, there's kind of like a fog of war in the world. History is in danger of being lost, and people have started to forget, the legends that existed in regions outside of their own. We have diaspora that is cut off from their homelands because they were stuck in other countries when the flux occurred. And so right now, you, as Mappa Mundi Chroniclers, your job is to rewrite the history of the world and figure out the mysterious contours that exist on the edges of maps, where it's like, here there be dragons and whatnot. Make sense?
That sounds dope.
Yeah, so much fun.
All right, so we're going to get into it right now. So take a look at your character sheet. I'll briefly describe each of your classes. Daniel, you are the archivist. The archivist of the party is the note taker, the map maker, the researcher, the archaeologist. To really take advantage of your archaeology background, Daniel, you are a fan of books. You are a fan of taking down very deliberate notes, and you're perhaps more at home with paper and parchment than you are with people. Kat, you are a diviner. Okay, well, as I said before, fate is an important presence in this world, and fate is worshipped in the various 10 regions of our world in different ways. In the country of Barbacia, which we are starting in, fate is seen as a presence that governs all. And basically, like, if you do good things in this life, you generate good karma and you'll be spun out into fate and be resurrected and reborn into a new body come your next life cycle. A diviner is someone who is able to foretell the patterns of fate using tarot cards or oracle bones, which are dice, basically. We built dice into the narrative of the game. So you, Kat, you might have a set of cards with you. You might have a set of dice or bones that you rattle around to hear the whispers of fate. And you've learned this aspect of foretelling in the Mappa Mundi Institute. So on the character sheet, you can see there's space for your license. You can see there's space for a character name. You can start thinking up what your character name might be. You don't necessarily have to be a native of Barbacia, which is once again based off of France. You can be a native of any other region that we have. And if you're interested, for example, if Daniel, if you want to be from our China analogous region, just let me know, and I can give you a little bit of lore on what your character might have been doing or who they might be. Don't worry about specialization and endorsement on the other side of your character sheet near the top. That is for multi-classing. That will be in the final version of the game. Okay. But yeah, start coming up with ideas for a character name. And if you want to draw a picture, that's fine. I'm going to hold up to my camera right now. This is my wife's character sheet right here. And so
I love that.
you can see the character that she drew when I played through this adventure with her as well. Her character was named Damsere, and she was a fixer, actually.
Very cool.
Okay, so if you go down to training on the left-hand side of your character sheet, you will see that we have 4 abilities. Okay, this is kind of like D&D's agility, charisma, dexterity. We have 4 central abilities that make up the pillars of the game. Okay, in our game, they are traversal, observation, deduction, and exploration. Traversal is how good are you at traversing the wilderness, jumping across rocks, climbing trees, moving your body in a physical way. Observation is what can you see, hear, smell, taste? What can you tell about this world using your senses? Okay. Deduction is how can you formulate a plan based off of what you observe. And finally, we have exploration, which is how good are you at getting from point A to point B, basically your sense of direction. Every character class is strong in one of these skills and weak in the other. So for Daniel, your strength as an archivist is observation. You're very good at observing things using your senses. Makes sense. That's what you're trained in. Your weakness might be traversal. Your weakness is traversal. You're not as good at jumping over logs or crossing rivers. For the diviner, your strength is deduction. You are good at deducing meaning from the things around you, thanks to your studies in fate, Kat. Your weakness is exploration. You might get a little bit lost from time to time. You might be able to foretell patterns in the stars, but actually following those star trails might lead you around in circles for a little bit. Each of these skills is assigned to either a D6 or a D4 as the starting series of skills. Okay. Don't worry about successes, failures, and expertise at the moment, because once again, that is mainly a thing to level up in the final game. In our game, your character doesn't really level up, but you get to level up your die assigned to each skill. So if you want to, you can track whether or not you succeed or fail at a roll. And then later on at the end of a session, you get a certain number of successes, you can level up your D6 to like a D8, your D8
That's
to
cool.
a D12, stuff like that. That's how you level up in our game. Okay. So moving on to the right-hand side of the character sheet, there's a section called skills. All right. Skills in Mappa Mundi are similar to what they are in D&D, like, animal handling, thievery, diplomacy. Each skill relies upon one of those 4 abilities. Okay. So for example, Daniel, your skills are local knowledge, behaviorist, folk tradition. Those respectively rely upon observation, and the deduction abilities. So basically, when you want to use your local knowledge skill, you have to make an observation roll. When you want to use your folk tradition skill, you make a deduction roll. It's similar to how it works in Dungeons and Dragons. Now, the full description of these skills is on page 30, starts on page 34 of the book, but they're actually pretty self-explanatory based on the names. Skills in our game are very narrative focused. You don't need to worry about the crunch. Based off of the names, do you guys have any questions on what your skills are? Daniel's are pretty self-explanatory.
Mine are pretty straightforward.
Yeah, cats are a little bit more esoteric.
Yeah, so mine are whispers, intentions, and div.
Yeah. So whispers basically means that as a diviner, when you close your eyes and listen to the sound of the wind, you can hear the whispers of fate. Okay. What are the whispers of fate telling me? I'm going to ask you to make a deduction roll. How am I foretelling things from these whispers carried by the reeds, carried by the wind? Okay.
Yep.
Intentions is an interesting one. So, as I talked about before, diviners in our world, they have their own sets of oracle bones. Well, actually, a lot of people in our world have oracle bones or dice. They are traditionally used to consult fate before making a decision. So, your skill intentions basically means that you can sense the intentions of people, and you can sense whether or not they might have rolled their own personal oracle bones recently and what the intent was behind those decision-making processes in their mind. It's another way of reading people. Okay. Finally, div is a secret language used by all diviners. Okay. You are fluent in it. Think of like druidic as a druid in D&D. Okay. So you can read div. Your div skill might enable you to read other secret languages and other sort of cryptographic symbologies and stuff like that. But basically, you're fluent in div. That's your thing.
Yeah.
And as for you, Daniel, local knowledge, kind of self-explanatory. You're very familiar with the region. Behaviorist, you're good at studying and observing the behaviors of others and kind of predicting, okay, how do these folks in a town, how do these folks,
people reading?
People reading. How do they act in the town? What's the structure here? Stuff like that. Folk tradition, folklore, stuff like that. Okay. So, whenever you want to use a skill in game, just let me know. I'll ask you to make a deduction roll or an observation roll. In this game, I will always tell you the number that you need to roll on the die. The target number is not a mystery. I will say, roll me a observation roll of 3 or above, something like that. And then you roll 3, that's a success.
How is the difficulty determined?
Difficulty is basically determined, it's basically whatever you're trying to do. And the difficulty, sometimes if you want to do something that's quite hard, I'm going to ask you to roll the maximum number on whatever die you have. So for example, Daniel, if you're trying to make a really esoteric local knowledge roll and your observation is D6, I'm going to say roll me a 6 or above on your observation.
Right. So it's always kind of informed by the die.
It's always kind of informed by the die for the character. Yeah. And so as your die changes, then certain things are going to become much easier. But because this is a starting adventure and you're all starting with D4s and D6s, the hardest possible tasks are going to be roll me a 6 or roll me a 4, depending on whatever your skill is. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So I don't have to roll any dice with the system. What I do have to do is kind of keep an eye on what the die are for your respective abilities and adjust the target numbers accordingly. Last but not least, on the bottom right-hand part of the sheet, we have a section called interactions. Interactions are basically like your combat abilities in Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, these are things that you will use in the encounter phase of the game when you come face to face with a monster. Okay, you can also use these outside of those encounter phases, but they're really meant to unlock the behaviors of certain monsters. So think of these as like your fighter's second wind or whatever the ranger has that lets them do the multi-attack multiple times, okay? Except our game doesn't really have combat. So these are all abilities of a chronicler. For example, sketch, take samples, read, touch. Each interaction is potentially linked with a behavior of the monster at the end of this adventure. You use the right interaction at the right time, succeed on the role, the ability roll that the interaction is connected with, you will successfully unlock the behavior of that monster and be able to write it down in your notebook. It's a lot like Pokemon Snap, which is a comparison that people keep making when
Oh,
they
I
play
like
this
that.
game. Yeah, if in Pokemon Snap, if you threw the ball at like the Charmander at the right time, it would make a pose and you'd be able to snap the right picture. So think of your
It's like
interactions as
Pokemon
like,
Snap meets Monster Hunter.
yeah, Pokemon Snap meets Monster Hunter, except you're not killing the monsters. So yeah, your interactions include sketch, take samples, and for cat, read, and touch. There is a complete explanation of interactions on page 44 of the book, but do you have any questions on what they do? Based on the names.
I think pretty straightforward for my two.
Straightforward, but more of a statement. If the audience is curious, you can get the quick start guide from Mappa Mundi for free on DriveThruRPG.
You
The link will
absolutely
be in
can.
the description.
Or itch, if you prefer itch.
Or itch.
Yeah, the quick start guide, or the pre-release guide as we're calling it. This is a complete game. The full rules are in here, as is the adventure that I'm running right now, which I wrote, so presumably I know how to run it. And I mean, presumably I know how this system works. But I've run this so many times. There were a couple of times running at UKG where I was like, who designed this crap? But that would be
that's
me.
me.
That would be me. That would be me and George Bickers, my good companion who created the idea for Mappa Mundi. And also shout out to Joel Kirkpatrick, our amazing artist. Joel drew all the stuff in this book, and I'll be revealing some cards as the game progresses, because we do have a card-based system to account for exploration, and his artwork is amazing.
And so much more art as well. I'm just going to plug your newsletter and your Discord server for you, because you get little sneak peeks of all the new monsters, all the new creatures as they're coming out through the art there. And it is incredible to see every single piece.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff cooking in the kitchen, and I'll probably give you guys a sneak peek when all this is done. But that's basically all the basics of the game that I've explained just now. Once again, you cannot die in this game. You can fail your mission. The fail state is basically losing track of the monster you guys will be trekking, not being able to unlock any of its behaviors, but you don't have to worry about death. You can gain injuries. Your character sheet has space for minor, major, and unconscious. Basically, if you get an injury, it makes your rolls harder. And if that happens over the course of gameplay, I will tell you how that will affect your roll. The last thing on your character sheet is a little section called Fate Points, right under the name of your license. Fate Points are basically like inspiration in D&D or hero points in Pathfinder. Do something cool over the course of the game, I will give you a fate point. You can use a fate point to instantly succeed on a failed roll. Or in some cases, I'm going to ask you, like, if you want to instantly succeed on a very big roll, I'm going to ask you to roll a fate die, which is basically any die that you have. Call it even or odd. Even, success, odd, failure. That's usually reserved for like key moments that you're trying to reverse. We can't make it too easy, but a lot of sort of generic little rolls, I'll let you automatically succeed on it. So that's everything. So do you have any other questions before we begin?
No questions.
No, let's get into it. Let's explore.
All right, so this starting adventure, Root and Branch, it takes place in the country of Barbecia, and I will show up a little picture of a map. The final version of the game has these fill-in maps that you can draw on with the rest of your party to create your own version of the world. So Barbecia, as I said before, vaguely based off of France, and all of you guys are departing from the capital city of Moltiers, which is located along the coast. Okay, you have been tasked by your superiors in the local Mappa Mundi Institute to go to a small village called Gascar, Gascar. I also sent you guys, we forgot to mention this earlier, I also sent you guys something called a Chronicle sheet. Do you guys have it open? If not, now would be a good time to open it.
I'm going to open it right now.
I have a little printed copy for myself.
Excellent. That's fantastic. So, aside from the character sheet, we have the Chronicle sheet, which is basically our way to reward and encourage people taking notes. Okay. Uh,
I'm doing it old school, just on a pad of paper.
That's totally fine. Yeah. So basically, the Chronicle sheet shows the 3 phases of the game: the research phase, the journey phase, and the encounter phase. We're starting the research phase right now, which is probably the phase that's most similar to a traditional TTRPG. You guys are going to do research on the monster that you're going to be trekking. In this case, it'll be a monster that is near the small town of Gascar, Gascar. So you can write that on your notes. You know the following facts about Gascar from your superiors. It's located in a region with frequent rainfall. For the last 6 months, the rain has been very heavy. The village and all the area around it is shrouded in fog. And this is tough for the residents of Gascar because this is a sleepy village of only 135 people at the time of the last census. Most of the residents are farmers struggling to cope with the inclement weather. You know that the local mayor of Gascar is a fellow named Bastian Hugo. You can write down his name as Mayor Hugo, Hugo. He's the owner of Gascar's only inn, the Yawning Mastiff, and he's held the position of mayor for the last 14 years, and his father held it before him. He doesn't do all that much because it's a small town. Doesn't really have much responsibility. Aside from the mayor, you have one other contact in Gascar, a woman named Sylvie Perrault. You can just write down Sylvie, Sylvie, and she is the head of the local House of Fate, which is a religious institution. She specifically wrote to the Mappa Mundi Institute asking that a party visit the town. According to her letter, the townspeople have noticed what she says are moving roots and branches in a nearby forest, and public opinion holds that a monster has moved into the area. So that's what you guys know. And as this research phase of Root and Branch starts, you guys are going to be walking on your way towards Gascar. And I'd just like to take this time for both of you to describe your character. And you can have a name if you want to, but tell us a little bit about what you look like and how do you feel about this mission to investigate this root and branch phenomenon near Gascar.
Kat, would you like to go first?
Sure, I will go because I thought of a character name last night, knowing that we were playing today. So I will be playing Tegan, who uses the pronouns they, them. And Tegan is fairly slim in build, I think, and has kind of jaw length, very straight hair, black fading to a little bit of like maybe an auburn or something at the tips, and is probably a mixed heritage from some of those diaspora folks who had, ended up in Barbesia when the flux happened. So, kind of a little ways back in the family line, but definitely not fully from this region.
As far as the biggest diaspora in Barbesia goes, it's immigrants from Tia Hakim, which is our sort of Middle Eastern analog. There's a large portion of immigrants that are descended from that part of the world who live in a section of the capital city of Moltiers called Little Sulhawa. And that's probably the place where the largest diaspora groups might be, and probably the place where, okay, these folks have been separated from their homeland for about 100 years, and now they've heard legends of their homeland, and they're kind of setting out to try to explore and return to the motherland for themselves.
Perfect. Let's give Tegan kind of an olive skin tone then as well, just to recognize that.
Awesome. And how does Tegan feel about visiting Sleepy Village of Gascar?
I think Tegan is excited about it. Tegan, as a diviner, is always interested in the interactions, I think, between people and fate in different places. And having largely been in this capital city for so long, is interested to see how how other folks in the region are living. I don't think Tegan's really adventured too far into the wilds yet, or into the spaces between cities and towns.
Excellent. Yeah, so you're probably familiar with star signs. You're probably familiar with the symbols of cards and the symbols of fate, but this is kind of your first real mission out into the wilderness to see a monster for yourself. It's a perfect story for a starting diviner. What about you, Daniel?
So my character's name is Jean-Baptiste,
No, Jean-Baptiste.
a local of Moultier. The name is taken from a historical French botanist and physician.
Excellent.
And Jean-Baptiste is not really a people person. Jean-Baptiste is young, early 20s, is very keen on conducting field work. All of his equipment is brand new. He's never left the academy. This is his first shot at field work. Maybe he got like a grant to do this, or it was just like a great opportunity to get published. And so he has overpacked for this excursion. He's got this like a giant pack with way too much. He's got like backups upon backups. He's got it's almost like a bandolier of pouches containing little vials, little wax paper pouches that he can put samples in to protect them. And he's got a giant notebook. And this notebook actually has a leather strap that he wears alongside this bandolier so that he never drops his notebook.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I
assume
I assume
really messy hair.
Yeah, I assume Jean-Baptiste then is very excited about this opportunity to explore this village and find out what this monster is. Yeah,
super keen, but also I think when we arrive at the village and we find that it's like everything is wet, everything is foggy, he's like, "Oh, my new boots, they're getting dirty," and it's all of his gear is finally seeing the field, and now he's kind of struggling with this, like, "Oh my god, I just spent all this money on my field gear, and now it's getting dirty."
getting scuffs on those brand new boots.
My new boots.
Yeah. Okay, that's perfect. That's a good segue into the beginning of the adventure as you guys pass a sign that says "Welcome to Gascar." So you enter into a village that is filled with this gentle glow that's radiating from the windows of several candlelit homes. There's the constant sound of rain pitter-pattering on thatched rooftops, and you can hear a dog somewhere down the road shaking droplets from its fur. There aren't that many locals wandering the streets. Those that you see briefly look like hardworking farmers trying to, go home for the day because it's raining a little bit too heavily to do anything else. It's a time of day. It's probably about the early afternoon, but you can't see that much because the fog is very, very, very thick in front of you. And it kind of makes you wonder what secrets might be hidden within this fog in this sleepy, quiet town. So I will be doing a little bit of slight railroading just in the interest of time to make sure we hit the various locations. And I'll kind of have to limit your interactions with NPCs a little bit. But I'm going to move you guys onwards towards the first location you can explore in town, which is the House of Fate. This is where your contact, Sylvie, resides. Okay, so the House of Fate is located not far from the entrance of the town. And, actually, we have a diviner in the party right now. So why don't we have this diviner make the first roll of the evening? Diviner, I believe you have a D4 in observation. Is that correct?
Yes, I do. Yep.
Yeah, so Tegan, as you guys walk up to the House of Fate, see if you can roll me a 2 or above with your observation die to figure out what you can tell.
That would be no. I rolled a 1 on my D4.
You rolled a 1. Okay,
it's
so
okay.
You're so
that's fine.
You're so kind of taken with the idea of exploring this new destination for the first time that you don't really notice too much about the structure around you. You just open the door of the House of Fate, and once again, you come outside from that. You exit that fog shrouded exterior, and you come inside this center of prayer and worship. You come face to face with Sylvie Peral, a plump, gregarious woman who is wearing symbols emblazoned with fate's loom. Fate is often represented with like a loom or like a wheel or a pattern in this world. Okay. And so Sylvie is very enthusiastic to see you guys and greets you happily. She's like, "Oh, Mappa Mundi Chroniclers! Thank goodness you're answering my summons. Oh, we've got some strange goings on here in Gascar. I'll try to fill you in with everything that I know, but basically, there have been weird moving roots and branches seen in the Azura Wood. That's Azura. It's a forest to the south of town." And I don't really know how to describe it, but it's like roots and branches have just come alive and are moving slowly back and forth, changing the very terrain of the place. And all the locals here, they're talking about, oh, it's a new monster. I've never visited the wood myself, but I know that it's kind of notorious for tangled confines, low visibility, and some volatile wildlife. Mayor Hugo has warned everybody to stay clear because he says it's not really safe, what with all the fog. And the other thing is that within the last week, 3 people have gone missing, and the locals believe that the monster might be behind it. We don't know if it's a monster to be feared or perhaps a good monster, but the disappearances make the coincidence very, very frightening. So I'm at your disposal. Please ask whatever questions you need, and I'll try to answer everything I can.
Did each of these folks who are now missing have anything in common? Did they go out together, or was this kind of separately over a period of days that they've gone missing?
Yeah, so they all went missing within the span of the last week, and I'll tell you the 2 that have the most in common. So there was an old lady. She's people kind of refer to her as a witch in town. Anise Bordeaux. You can write down her name as Anise, Anais. So she disappeared midway through the week. She's a hermit lady, lives in a cottage outside the town. People call her a witch because she's sort of a wise woman, a bit of a healer, also a bit of a prophet in some ways. She's a fellow sister in the ways of fate, except she goes to a far different area of interpretation than me. She's often talking about, oh, fate's changing the world, changing the ecosystem. We need to respect fate, and monsters are agents of fate. She'll talk her ear off to anyone who'll listen to her. But anyway, she went missing halfway through the week. And then the other person who went missing around the same time as Anise is Elodie Laval, Elodie. So Elodie is 18 years old. She's a very bright girl, but she's the daughter of Guillaume Laval, who is the owner of Guillaume's Goods. Guillaume, French name, Guillaume. He's the owner of Guillaume's Goods. It's the only general store in town. Now, Elodie and Anise, they had some sort of a relationship. I think it might have been a bit of a mentor-mentee relationship in some ways, but I don't really know the details. You can try maybe asking the mayor a little bit more, or if you want to, you can go to Guillaume's Goods and ask her father. But I have to warn you, old Guillaume is a difficult sort of man. He was never in the best of tempers, and ever since his daughter left, he's been in a foul state, understandably so. He keeps weird hours. He has another daughter as well, Louise Laval, Louise. Oh, yes. And if you want to know the third person that vanished, a fella named Pierre Vercher, Pierre. So Pierre, he's a self-proclaimed big game hunter. He was actually the first person to vanish. He vanished well before Anise and Elodie, maybe 3 or 4 days. He's actually the only missing person who's not from here, not from the town of Gascar. He had heard about the root and branch monster, which is what the locals are coming at, and he said he had come to town to try to hunt it and make a name for himself. He wasn't very popular. He was very, let's just say, full of big words and lots of insults to the local population.
Well, that's certainly an interesting trio. You're correct that it sounds like Anise and Elodie do have a lot more in common. And so I do feel like learning more about them might yield better results than following up on this hunter.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get too many foreigners to Gascar, let alone big game hunters. And I know the mayor's a little bit worried. He just doesn't want people to come to Gascar and be turned off by the fact that the few foreigners that we get are immediately go missing. But honestly, I'm personally the least worried about the hunter myself. I'm more concerned.
Was the hunter staying at the inn?
Yes, he was staying at the inn, the Yawning Mastiff Inn. Yeah, run by the mayor. So you can go there for more clues if you're searching for them.
Yeah, and if we need to speak to the mayor, we can always go to the two birds with one stone.
So is there anything else you want to ask Sylvie? Or anything else you want to do in the House of Fate?
I have no questions for Sylvie, but I would like to try using my local knowledge skill to see if I know more about the Azura wood.
Sure. Make me an observation roll of 3 or above, please.
I rolled a 6.
You rolled a 6. The Azura wood. The Azura wood, based on the maps that you studied before coming here, stretches about 13 miles south and southeast of Gascar. You know that the wood was once a popular place for foragers and some hunters, but the constant rainfall in this region for the last 6 months has just made it difficult to traverse and not really a place too many people go to anymore. You suspect that the Guillaume, the general store owner, probably got some goods from the Azura wood in the past, maybe mushrooms or any sorts of other roots and herbs that are foraged there. So he might know a little bit more about the terrain in the forest, perhaps more about the monster.
Okay.
I would also, while we're here, especially learning what we have about Anise and Elodie and that they are more connected to fate, I'd like to maybe use either whispers or intentions, whichever one kind of makes most sense, to take a few moments, not an extended amount of time, to just, commune with the fates and ask them to help reconnect me with these two women, to kind of, make Gascar whole again. Because it feels like there's something missing here.
Sure. So do you want to use whispers, perhaps?
Yeah, let's do whispers.
Sure. Give me a deduction roll of 3 or more if you can.
Great. That's on a D6. My dice really don't like me. It's another one.
It's totally okay. It's what happens. Yeah, it's what happens. Yeah. It's a brand new mission for you, and it's tricky sometimes to hear the whispers of fate. What'd you get? 2,
a 1.
3, 2 or 1? A 1. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's hard for you to judge the whispers of fate in this moment. You kind of look at Sylvie and you look at the House of Fate itself, and you can actually get the sense that this small religious center probably doesn't have much in the way of worshippers. You look at Sylvie and you see that she's probably a foreigner herself who also moved here some time ago to spread the word of fate in the countryside. And so there just aren't that many divination students or followers of fate in this small village. And that could be why the whispers are not particularly strong here. Okay. But that's a good wrap up on Sylvie's place, the House of Fate. So there's a couple other destinations you can go to in town. There is Guillaume's Goods, the general store. There is the mayor's office. Or you guys can set out to the woods right now if you want to. Where would you like to go?
I think we should do both. Why don't we start with Guillaume's Goods, because Elodie is his daughter.
Sure.
Are you going to be the one to talk with him, Jean-Baptiste? You who does not like speaking with strangers?
I could try talking. All of the best scholars are practiced in the art of conversation. So perhaps I should try.
Well, I'll say this. You walk around the corner to Guillaume's Goods. This is a shop that's probably large for Gascar, but it would only be a very meager store in a bigger town. Certainly nothing compared to the shops in the capital. You can see that from the windows. There's a large variety of goods inside, from farming implements to dried vegetables, but the curtains are semi-drawn, and there's a big sign that says closed on the door. If you knock, there is no response. What will you do?
Is there any light sort of radiating from inside?
If you guys want to, you can both try to make an exploration check using your exploration die. Give me a 2 or above, please.
I got a 2.
Got a 2. What about
all of the
Tegan?
dice that I've pulled for this game do not like me. That is the third one that I have rolled.
Got to switch those dice up. Fate
Now,
is
that
not
said,
smiling
if
upon
you're
you now.
looking for new dice and you want the whispers of fate to be easier to hear, Dice Envy has you covered. Head to diceenvy.com and use code AZNSRepresent for 10% off.
Jean-Baptiste turns to the camera and it's like diceenvy.com and then turns back. Okay, so Jean-Baptiste, you meander around the general store, and by the back alleyway, you can see that there is some light coming from a slightly ajar window on the second floor. There's a pile of firewood nearby. If you clamber up on the firewood, you can't quite climb up, and you can't reach up and open the window, but you can just kind of vaguely hear a man's voice inside.
My huge backpack, prop it up against the side of the building with some firewood, and use that as like a stool?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm going to say you don't really need to roll for this because the firewood pile is sturdy enough that you can kind of clamber up on top of it and you can sit there. You can eavesdrop, actually.
I would like to.
Based on your position. You can hear a man who's kind of talking to himself. He's muttering. You hear him hit a table a few times. He sounds like he's got some anger. He says, "What did I ever do to have my child leave me? It's that rotten witch's fault. She led my girl astray."
He blames Anise.
Yeah.
Anything else?
That's all. He's just muttering to himself and kind of cursing under his breath. But you would assume that this is probably Guillaume.
Yeah. I think that's a safe assumption. I'll ease my way down very carefully, and then share that information with Tegan.
All right, Tegan, what do you think?
I mean, it sounds as though Guillaume has very much closed himself off to, potentially his neighbors. It's the middle of the afternoon. I would assume that he should be open for business, but definitely to how fate is working in his life and in his daughter's life. And so I don't feel as though we're going to get any more information, especially not about Elodie, from him that would be uncolored by this shutting down that he seems to be doing. I feel for him very much so.
Would you guys like to try talking with him or no? Because you can probably yell out at him now that you've noticed the window, but how he reacts, as Tegan said, might be volatile.
I think that he's best left alone until we can bring him more news of his daughter. Perhaps we do a little bit of reconnaissance and see what we can find.
We could go to Anise's little hermit hut cottage. I was also thinking that I could potentially approach him as a man of science and not religion. Kind of play the angle since he's kind of weary of the fates.
Would you like to yell at him from the alley now?
Not yet. I think we should go to the cottage, the Anise's cottage first, though.
Sure, you can go to Anise's cottage, which is outside town. It's on the outskirts of town, so you have to double back a bit, but that's totally fine.
Do we want to?
Do we want to talk with the mayor first?
Yeah. Do you want to talk with the mayor first? Okay,
I think that makes sense. We could go talk to. We can go talk to Mayor Hugo.
We are an official disposition or an official envoy from the Institute, so
you are.
I suppose we should make ourselves known to the local authorities. That's probably somewhere in the handbook.
Yeah. So you can make your way to the Yawning Mastiff Inn, which is the sole place for outsiders to rest in Gascar. So it's a pretty cozy hub. It's probably it probably doesn't see that much clientele, but it's warm. There's food and beer available for all. There's a sleeping, aging mastiff who gave the inn its name, lounging outside of the mayor's office. So the mayor welcomes you guys in. He's a portly man, just shy of 60. He's got a big bushy beard that he pulls on when stressed, and he seems like he's been pretty stressed lately because he's really pulling the whiskers. And he's like, "Oh, yes, you Mappa Mundi people. Well, you're researchers, right? The scholars. Well, we could use a scholar. Tell me what the monster is. Solve my problems for me, please."
We've yet to venture into the Azura Wood. We've actually come with some questions before
I
we
know
do
a fair
so.
amount. I know a fair amount about the wood, and I've seen the monster myself, actually.
You have.
Yeah. So
Can you tell me more about that?
yeah, so I've glimpsed the monster. I have to admit, I'm not sure if it's a monster at all, but I've seen what everyone else in the town is talking about. So I went to Azura once folks started gossiping, and after I crossed the border into the wood, I saw a collection of very thin trees sticking out of the mist. Okay? And I watched those trees float maybe 15 meters until they vanished into the fog entirely. So just imagine, completely fog in front of you, thick as pea soup, a bunch of floating trees just dancing in the fog. I couldn't see what they were connected to, just floating in the fog. And it was spooky, like the forest itself came alive. Trees aren't supposed to do that.
Did you hear anything?
I just heard the shifting of trees, the trees hitting other trees and branches knocking other leaves down. But yeah, it was really something else.
That's very interesting because in all of the report we received mentioned moving roots and branches and nothing about floating trees.
Yeah, well, the locals are saying roots and branches, but I saw trees too. Okay, what I saw were trees, and maybe there were roots and branches attached to them. But I have to tell you, the forest itself is thick, trees everywhere, visibility is low, and you can easily walk into a tree and knock your face in. It's even worse now that the trees themselves have gained sentience, or so it appears to be.
Has
So
anybody else seen these floating trees?
so, by the way, guys, as you ask more questions and do more research into the Azura Wood, I will be assembling a deck of cards. Okay, these cards represent the environments that you guys will traverse during the second stage of the game, the journey phase. The more you ask about particular facets of the Azura Wood, the more potential environments you will unlock. I will say that you guys have unlocked the forest card.
Oh, cool.
Okay. Now, each of these cards has radial symmetry. Each of these cards can be read rightwise or upside down. Later on, when I present the cards to you during the journey phase of the game, if you guys have properly discovered all there is to discover about the forest, I will present it rightwise, and you will have an easy traversal in the forest. If you haven't quite figured out everything there is to know about the forest and done your research into this environment, I will present it inverted, which means that there will be challenges to surmount within the forest. So I will say you guys have unlocked the forest card. Keep on doing your research and interrogating the mayor.
Okay.
Yes, like we had heard that through research and through just speaking with a few folks as we were coming into town, that the wood is usually like tangled and confused. Is all of this movement of the roots and the branches opening up different pathways, or is it knitting things closer together and things are even more tightly wound and confused? Or has anyone even gotten close enough to tell and come back?
Hard to tell exactly. I've told people not to go into the woods anymore because I don't need people getting injured on my watch. Aside from that hunter, Pierre, I mean, and Elodie and Anise, they went off against my wishes. But I'll say this: the forest does feel like it's been changing recently. New pathways have appeared in it, and I don't really know why. But the thing that really bothers me the most is the fog. The fog is just so incredibly thick. It's gotten thicker and thicker. I'll say that in the past, uh, the foragers used to tie ribbons to trees, red ribbons, and they would use the red ribbons to mark a trail through the fog, and that's how they were able to, find their way. But nowadays, the fog has gotten so bad, and those red ribbons, I mean, they've been torn and they've fallen apart. So Azura Wood, in my opinion, is a dangerous place. So you guys have unlocked the fog card.
So they said that the mayor said that red ribbons were hung from trees, like trail markers, essentially, but they were torn.
Mm-hmm. They become torn. It's like torn over the years.
Yeah, tattered. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
So not like something is sabotaging them, more like they're just being worn due to time. There's a lack of maintenance.
Seems like natural decay. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
And
at least as far as you know.
Right. So the fog is a result of all the rain, we understand. Has the underlying terrain absorbed that rain? Are we likely to come across, standing pools of water, or should we expect it to be muddy, boggy? Things like that.
Yeah, I think you might want to watch out for bogs. I'll say that there's a substantial number of wet patches in the forest, and there's a whole section of it that leads into basically wetlands. And so you're gonna want to be careful of nasties that might lurk beneath bog water. And he looks down at your fine boots, Jean-Baptiste. You got to be ready to get those wet. I'm afraid, my friend. They're not gonna be so shiny once you're done going through the woods.
So there's a little bit of
you've unlocked the wetlands card, by the way.
Okay. I want to use my folk tradition skills. You've mentioned dangers and bogs. I know within Mappa Mundi, there's there are monsters. Is there an element of magic or the supernatural or anything like that?
Yeah, well, you don't even need to use your folk traditions for this necessarily, but you know that a lot of monsters are rumored to be connected with fate, and therefore they have magical abilities and whatnot. These behaviors that you strive to understand as an archivist, they're what many people would call magic. And you know that there are mysterious goings on in the world that are often described by magic as many. Whether or not you as an archivist see them as magic or just, a sophisticated form of science, that's up to you.
Exactly. I've got a question that I'd like to use folk tradition to learn more or potentially see if I know anything about the Azure Woods as it relates to, burials or reasons why they would mark these trails. Are there certain, what was their intent with marking the trails? Is it just, for foraging? I don't know if folks, especially those who run the general store, would even want to mark off their, secret spots. But yeah, I'd like to know more about why they marked the trails and if there are things like burial rituals that took place in the forest.
Make me a deduction roll of 5 or more, if you can.
I got a 5. These dice are great.
Yeah. You think that it's probably a mixture of foragers marking some trails, and basically groups of foragers acting together almost like a guild to try to help each other out. But you also think that probably not all of these markers were left by foragers. You think probably some have been left by hunters as well, based on what you know of folk traditions. There is a tradition of hunting in Barbecia, and you need to have a proper hunting license to do so. And there has been a tradition of staking out nice spots in a wood and also kind of claiming the place as yours. This is often frowned upon, and you sense that probably some of these hunters might be using the ribbons that foragers have left behind. Actually, they might be using a different shade of red to kind of mark their spots as well. So it's probably a mixture of the two. As far as burial traditions go, you don't know of anything specifically, but you do know that the Azure Wood eventually leads to a mountain range. And there are some rocky areas that you would assume are probably past the wetlands that the mayor is talking about.
Okay. Kat, did you have any questions?
More at this point, I think, now that we've had some interaction with the mayor, I would like to get a sense of his intentions, and whether he is perhaps inflating some of what he's told us versus, really having it be a true accounting of what he's seen, because this is so far outside of what everyone else has told us that I want to get a sense. I want to do a vibe check on the mayor.
Sure. Make me an intentions roll. That's going to be using your deduction 2 or above, please.
You got this, Kat.
I really don't.
Oh my god.
Did you roll roll one again?
1.
I rolled a 1. I don't know what's the matter with these dice.
Okay.
I got them because they match like the oranges and the pinks and everything, like in what I'm wearing, and they're not helping.
Mappa Mundi dice jail.
Mayor Bastion Hugo is a mystery to you. This man's obsessive yanking of his beard is very distracting. Yeah, just very, very, very distracting and kind of annoying. I will say this: try. Let's see if whispers is a little bit better. Try whispers, deduction. Just see if you can also make 2 or above using your whisper skill.
Okay. Oh, that's a 2 at least.
Oh, that's a 2 at least. Awesome. So the mayor himself is a bit of a mystery to you, but you close your eyes and you listen for the whispers of fate around you. And as you close your eyes, you can hear the sighing voice of fate saying to you, "The hunter, Pierre, stayed at the inn. His room might contain something. Ask the mayor."
Okay. Yeah, I do think that before we finish up, speaking with the mayor about Pierre, I mean, it's not that we don't care about Pierre. It's just that Pierre seems to have intentions that are counter to, I think, a lot of what we would have learned at the Institute. I mean, the Institute is not about killing or even hunting necessarily. It's about carefully tracking and observing and, taking our time. So,
Yeah. The whispers of fate, they have a bit of a sinister vibe to them when they talk about Pierre.
Hunters do the same, though. They are very careful trackers and observers. Just the end goal is different.
Yes.
This is true. The end goal
Absolutely.
And if he came here with the intent of hunting whatever was in the woods, then he must have some sort of intelligence. Maybe he had a report or something.
Yes, yeah. I think that the thing I would be most interested in asking the mayor is how Pierre heard about this creature. Like, are they broadcasting this? Are they publicizing it? Like,
we're not broadcasting it really, but the locals have begun to talk, and there is trade with some of the other villages nearby. And people start talking, "Hey, there's a new monster moving roots, branches, trees. Oh, something's in the forest." And these stories tend to snowball. I don't know exactly what Pierre heard, but I'll tell you this: he was a fella full of lots of braggadocio. He came with 2 big spears, said that, "Hey, I'm going to take this monster's head for myself." And he stayed at my inn, racked up a massive tab, drank himself under the table, didn't pay it off. He owes me money.
If we find him in a state to pay for the bills, you can be sure that we will make sure that this is corrected and that your account is made whole.
No, I'd much appreciate it.
And the thing that would help us find him is if we could access his room.
Oh, well, it's right upstairs. I'll take you there myself. So you can head upstairs to Pierre's old room. It's been cleaned, but maybe there's something here. If you guys want to, try to make an observation roll of 3 or above, please.
I got a 5.
5.
Mine doesn't even matter.
Oh no!
Believe in it.
We believe in you. We believe in you.
It was another 1.
Flip that bastard die up high in the sky.
But I don't know what's the matter with my dice. They don't get enough love because dice. I'm usually sitting in your chair, Jeremy, as the person running the game who doesn't need to roll dice.
That's totally made by Chessex.
Yeah. Okay, Jean-Baptiste, you can notice some ink marks and splatters on a desk in the room. There is also, if you're taking the time to investigate the space between the bed and the wall, there's a satchel bag that has slid behind that little space. There's a journal inside the bag.
I'll first look to the desk with the ink splattered all over, be like, how crude. And then I'll go
You're
look
gonna
at the
need
journal.
to, yeah. I mean, it just looks like ink splatters. If one of you guys can make me a deduction check of 4 or more, or use a relevant skill, you can always use a skill if you want to. You might be able to interpret these marks in some fashion.
Take samples.
Take samples is more
I
of
guess that's interaction. That's not a
interaction.
skill.
That's interaction with a monster. But yeah, it's either using
almost
deduction or just
wondering
one of your skills.
If Div could look for like some kind of like coded like something in these ink blotches, maybe.
Yeah. So I mean, Div is basically mastery of the foreign language of diviners, but that language can be almost like decoding ink splatters in many ways. So let's have you make an observation roll. Give me 2 or above.
Oh, well, that die is on the floor, so that doesn't count. It's a 3, though.
Oh,
3.
highest roll.
Huzzah. Highest roll. Okay. You study the ink splatters, and you can tell that Pierre was definitely writing something on this desk. He was using a quill. He was writing directly onto the table. He wasn't writing in div. This man is no diviner, but you know that sometimes diviners writing in div will often encode their messages to each other using things like invisible ink, using things like, okay, hold the parchment over a fire flame in order to reveal the letters. So, this one's pretty simple. You can grab a piece of parchment. By the way, inventory is not of massive importance in this game. If you find an item or have something on your person, you're generally assumed to have the stuff you need for your mission. Just make sure you use it to advance the fiction somehow. So let's say, I'm pretty sure either Jean-Baptiste or you has like parchment on you guys.
We're chroniclers.
A writing.
Yeah, I've got tons.
He's got tons. You can take a piece of paper. You can take a piece of charcoal and do like a rubbing on the table. Okay. After doing this, the paper reveals a very odd drawing that looks like a huge spiral. Okay. Huge spiral, kind of like Naruto style. What was it?
Uzumaki.
Uzumaki, yeah, like a huge spiral. And the spiral is surrounded by trees. It looks like Pierre was maybe doing some doodles, but it appears to be a spiral of some sort. And this is actually a clue related to the so-called root and branch monster that might affect how it acts towards you guys later on in the adventure.
Yeah, I think I will point it out to Jean-Baptiste and say, this would be a strange pattern for hunting, potentially. But it does seem as though Pierre was very focused on this.
Yeah.
To not even put down a blotter or something to, like, protect the desk. I understand why the mayor is upset.
Just a spiral.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a spiral. Huh.
Tegan, you can give yourself a fate point for finding the drawing.
Yay.
Now, can I look through his journal to see if there's any reference to this?
Sure. You can go through his journal. Now, this journal was not really used. He was not much of a writer, it seems. He is one of those things that he barely wrote in it and then kind of forgot it, and that's why it's been left behind. But he has written, it looks like he's making an effort to try to start a journal. It's like day 1, like something like that. But
starts off really nice and long entries, and then they end up being really short.
Like nothing. So days 1 and 2, he just mentions that he made regular scouting trips through the Azura Wood, and he navigated a river while tracking his quarry. So you guys have unlocked the river card.
That would have been lovely for anyone else that we talked to have told us that there's a river involved and not just woods.
Well, you assume that probably the wetlands that the mayor mentioned is connected to the river, but you also get that this river is probably deeper into the woods. So Pierre probably marched a good, 8, 9, 10 miles into the woods based on what he scribbled. But he hasn't mentioned really anything further in the journal.
No mention of spiral. Yeah.
No mention of the spiral. So I will say this. This is everything that you can find in Pierre's room. And in the interest of time, I'm going to say that you've exhausted the mayor as well. What would you guys like to do now?
We did say we would go to Anise's cottage.
Yes. I'm assuming it's kind of like mid-afternoon. If we got here early afternoon, like all these conversations have taken us to like late afternoon.
I mean, you haven't been in the town too long, so you've got time.
Yeah. So I think it's also going to depend whether we come back here to sleep or whether we want to head into the woods in the dark.
How long would it take for us to get to the cottage? Not long, I would assume.
No, about 20 minutes.
We could just go to the cottage, because the mayor did mention that he saw the floating trees at the edge of the forest at like the tree line. So we can go to the cottage, see what the timing is like, because the visibility is going to be bad no matter what because of this fog. It'll just be like non-existent at night. So while we have some daylight, we might be able to just explore the tree line.
And I will say this: the cottage is located on the border of the woods. So if you guys want to forge ahead into the woods, then that's totally fine too. Okay.
Or we could do a vibe check at the cottage and like see if it would be welcoming to us, like sheltering there overnight instead of having to come back here. And
yeah.
Okay. So you've seen things in Gascar. So you decide to leave the town, and you go about 20 minutes in the direction of Anise Bordeaux's cottage, which is also the direction of the Azura Woods. I mean, the mayor and Sylvie have kind of given you guys a rough sense of the layout of this place. So Witch Anise's cottage, Witch Anise as she's called, her cottage, it lies on the border of kind of a bog that stretches east several meters to a line of shadowy trees that mark the start of the wood. Okay. The door to the cottage is actually unlocked. It looks like probably the mayor, some local people have probably searched the place after she went missing. Probably standard procedure. The interior of the cottage, you have a joint common room and a kitchen area. There's a small sleeping quarters and there's a toilet space. It's dusty. There's a very pungent smell of rotten herbs that are hanging from the low ceiling of the kitchen. The herbs have probably gone off within the last week, and that rotting smell is permeating the cottage. There's a table in the common room that immediately draws your eye. The table is laden in parchment, all covered in notes in another language. Luckily, it's in Div.
Amazing.
It's in Div. Let's see how good your Div is. Give me an observation roll of 2 or above. Even if you fail, you'll still find out some things. So don't worry.
Also going off the edge of the table. Nope, that is a die that hates me.
Do it again. I'll give you another chance.
You have your fate point. You have your fate points.
You also have a fate point. You also have a fate point. Yeah, you can use a fate point if you want to.
Use the mechanics.
Yeah, let's use the fate point.
Fate point. You instantly succeed. And in fact, you succeed enough for me to tell you everything you can possibly find. So you immediately scan over all the notes. You're very fluent in Div, although it takes you some time to lock in, as the youth say, and basically unlock that fluency. So you find entries on Anise is a much better note taker than Pierre was. You find entries on everything from Anise's plan to grow her garden to her appreciation for Elodie Laval. She describes Elodie as a most willing student in the divining arts, despite the objections from her father. Yeah,
lovely.
So the most recent entry is basically on the intense rain and the intense fog in Gascar. And Anise describes this as an ecological byproduct from this root and branch monster in the forest. She says that the root and branch monster's arrival has changed the ecology of the woods and probably heralded new alterations in fate. She mentions that she and Elodie have taken a trip to the woods to basically learn more about the monster, and also because she wants Elodie to practice her divination skills. It seems that Elodie wishes to attend the famous divination school called Omen. You know of Omen, Tegan. It's a famous divination school in the capital city of Maltiers. It's you can choose to be a graduate from there if you want to. Would that make sense for your character, or would your character be someone who has kind of studied informally?
I think that the divination part is informal and has just been like honed through through the Mappa Mundi Institute and kind of like
Perfect.
studies there.
Yeah. So this would be a more formal education, 4 to 5 years of study. And you know that attending a school like Omen is very difficult for most and also very expensive. But you know that if you have a sponsor, usually a graduate of the school, they can often help you get entrance. So you would assume that this old witch, Anise, obviously some kind of divination expert herself, probably a former graduate of the school, probably sees some potential in this young lady and has chosen to sponsor her, and is maybe having her, do some sort of field mission, get some experience. You sense that there's probably some family drama here. You mentioned that the father is not that keen on her learning. It's not hard to put things together. Hey, father, shopkeepers, you heard him being very angry inside his window, probably disapproves of his daughter going off to the capital city and studying in a fancy school, that sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah. Wonderful. I think that I'm going to briefly kind of summarize and transcribe into our regular script, like just for our field notes.
There's one more thing. Anise has written that her and Elodie, they are following the river that winds westward through the wood and finally ends near this rocky area that I think Jean-Baptiste kind of
you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, at least we have kind of corroborating narratives of the landscape. That's lovely. So I'll kind of summarize all of that for our field notes. I think the other thing that's been throwing me off is just like all of these kind of herbs that are starting to molder. So if it's okay with Jean-Baptiste, I'll take a little bit of time to just kind of like clean and air out the space as well.
You want to clean her hut?
Yeah, from my training, just to.
Are there anything you want to do with your skills in here, perhaps?
I'm thinking that possibly intentions again. I both want to know how recently someone was here, but also kind of what the intent was in going through the place and in like kind of leaving it in a state that feels like wouldn't be the way Anise would have kept it.
Yeah, that's good. So intentions, give me a deduction roll of 2 or above if you can.
It's a 6.
Oh, 6. Look at that.
This is one of the dice that I bought from Dice Envy, by the way.
Yeah, there you go. Boom. Perfect advertisement for Dice Envy. Says Jean-Baptiste. He looks to the camera and winks. Intentions. You stand in the middle of this hut and you kind of grasp the situation here very clearly, and you close your eyes and sort of the chaos of the hut, condenses in your mind. You're able to focus a little bit, and you can feel that the intentions here were that of an elderly woman mentoring a younger woman who probably visited here maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, probably secretly, possibly a little bit stressed every time she came here because she was hiding her visits from her disapproving father figure. You can sense that there was camaraderie here, an atmosphere of learning. They were here last year, probably 2 days ago, and then they set out with a wide variety of supplies. Probably Anise picked the last good herbs from, the stuff growing from her ceiling and the stuff growing in her garden, and then they probably got a rucksack and then went out in the woods to try to see this monster for themselves. And as they left, there was probably this feeling of like field expedition, field trip, time to get experience, time to learn on the job. If you want to become a true diviner, if you want to attend Omen, then the best thing to do is to see this monster for yourself.
And like no sense of danger from them. Like that this
There's actually no sense. There was no sense of danger from it. You don't sense that Anise was anxious about this at all. So either she was just very confident or foolhardy. You're not certain of which yet.
Yeah, or they, maybe they didn't think that this monster was actually, dangerous.
Yeah,
maybe.
And we won't know until we encounter the monster ourselves. But this feels like a lot more information, especially the weather part of it, because everyone else seems to have told us that the weather changed and then the monster moved in, but this is the flip of that. The monster moved in and then the weather
Anise's
changed.
notes seem to indicate that the monster moved in and probably just wasn't observed for a long period of time, and the weather started changing. So,
yeah,
interesting. So I will say that this is probably everything you can do in Anise's cottage. Would you guys like to explore the woods? You're right there, and you still have plenty of time to do so. It's only about 3 p.m.
let's do it then.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
get in there and see what we can see.
All right, boom. So this takes us to the journey phase of Mappa Mundi. Okay, in the journey phase of the game, I am going to be revealing these cards that I have assembled, this deck of cards, okay? And I will be revealing whether the environments that you guys unlocked are going to be rightwise or inverted. We'll get into the shaping mechanic later as we begin playing properly, but I'll say this. As you guys leave the cottage, you enter the Azure Wood and see all the fog emerging from its fringes. And as you walk into the woods proper, you can faintly hear the call of an occasional raven reverberating above these labyrinthine passages. You can hear other sounds too. There's like a sound of water bubbling, burbling somewhere deeper in the forest. And you can see furtive movements in the underbrush. But once again, that thick fog is right before you and it's very heavy. And there's a slight sense of unease. But Anise and Elodie weren't worried. So maybe this wood is not as ominous as it appears. All right, so first off, I will be revealing the first card in the deck I have assembled for you guys, and that is the Forest card. Okay,
Nice.
You guys asked the mayor a lot of questions about the forest's terrain and whether or not it had changed enough, whether or not it had changed a lot over the last period or so. You didn't really ask too many questions about the branches and trees themselves of the forest, or the I guess whether or not there were any fixtures in the forest like brambles or thorns and whatnot. So there's still a little bit of mystery is left to the forest here. Okay, so I'm going to say that this forest card, I'm presenting it to you inverted because you didn't quite find out everything you could have found out. So the woods still loom above you in an imposing manner, and the ground feels a little bit treacherous. So I'm going to hit you guys with a challenge that you need to surmount as you enter the forest. All right. So the first thing you guys see is that thorns are actually dotting many corners of the woods confines. Like imagine the thorn bushes in Sleeping Beauty. Okay, you come across these brambles that block your path and start catching on your clothes the deeper you walk into the forest. It's making movement very, very difficult. And the thorns, there's the danger of them pricking your skin, causing some wounds. What will you guys do to circumvent this challenge? Take a look at your skills. Take a look at your abilities. How will you make it past these thorny brambles?
My weakness is traversal.
Mm.
And we don't want to really get wounded by this, especially if we're going into like a bog. I don't want our wounds to get infected or anything like that.
Yeah, there is possible danger of getting like a minor to a major injury here, depending on which route you try to take and how you approach these brambles.
Now, I'd be hesitant to try to cut them away, especially since we're hearing reports that like the roots and branches are moving. I don't want to necessarily upset the woods. Also, as a botanist, I don't want to really do that unnecessarily. So this is our only way through.
Yeah, if I ask Fate to maybe like show us a little bit more of an easier path, or to help ease our way through this.
Yeah, or I could tap into my large pack of gear and perhaps I have clothing that can protect us from the thorns.
Let's try yours first, because the fates seem to be different here in Gascar than they are in town. I have to say that
that's one way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So what are you going to do, Jean-Baptiste?
I think I would have to roll traversal, but with narratively me trying to use some of the newly purchased gear that I have.
Newly purchased gear. Okay. So yeah, let's make me a traversal check. This is going to be tough for you because your traversal is not that particular high. So it's going to be a 4 or above.
Okay.
Well, you can't roll. You have to roll 4. Yeah, you have to roll max here.
Just totally threw that. Okay, here we go. I got 4.
You got a 4? Okay. Jean-Baptiste, what did you buy? Like a machete? Like you have what do you got on you?
I feel like I've got these like high riding boots, so they're like maybe I've got a spare pair and I hand them to Tegan. I don't know if they fit, but they'll like protect us up to our knees.
Yeah.
And I've got these big gloves, these thick leather gloves that I've used in the past to protect me from things in the lab that are like poisonous or sharp. They're like almost like cut-proof gloves. I'm going to use them to like grab and push these like thorny brambles up to form like an arch that like Tegan can get through.
Okay. So Jean-Baptiste pulls out these large gloves, a little bit oversized, but he just grabs the brambles, manages to push them upwards and form the arch. It's hard for you, Jean-Baptiste. You're sweating a little bit. You're not used to
I'm definitely
lifting
sweating
things. It's difficult for you, but Jean-Baptiste truly subverting expectations, the nerd doing something truly physical right now and looking good while doing it. You managed to form a little archway for Tegan and yourself to duck under.
kind of like MacGyvering this.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I would like you, Jean-Baptiste, to shape the forest. So shaping is a special mechanic in Mappa Mundi. If you look on the Chronicles sheet, you can see that we have a section for location shaping. You can also shape certain creatures and opportunities that you come across in the game. But basically shaping is adding your own flavor text and telling me what this location looks like to you and telling me the details of what is in the location. Okay. The only rule for shaping is that it can't contradict what anyone else has said, including me, the narrator. But once you shape something into the game, it is canon. That's the narrative that we run with. And you can go as wild as you want with shaping. You can say that the forest card, which you are now shaping, actually the trees, beyond the outlines of the trees, you can see those burial graves that you previously weren't sure about. And you can tell me that there's a ritual here, that maybe the brambles were used to cover some of these burial graves so they won't be disturbed. Or you can just tell me what the brambles look like up close. So I invite you now, Jean-Baptiste, to shape for me what the forest looks like in your eyes. And that is the version of the forest that we will run with for the rest of the game.
So we already know that the Azura, this is from my, my local knowledge check. So we've already established that it's tangled, confined, the wildlife is volatile, and but it was once a popular place for foragers. So I think as we kind of get through this big tangle on the edge of the woods, we see these like thorny vines have kind of wrapped themselves around the trees. It's almost like they're a completely different species of plant. And since we've also established that the sort of red ribbons have been kind of like worn over time and with the disruptions to the forest, we actually see a lot of these red ribbons tangled up in these vines as they've wrapped around the trees, forming this like nonsensical sort of like trail markers. On top of that, the forest floor is got about like an inch of water. I think the rain is so heavy that it hasn't like fully permeated the ground and it's now kind of flooded. But because this was popular for foragers, we actually see under the surface of the water these drowned sort of like fungi.
Ooh, drowned fungi. Very interesting.
Varying colors.
Okay, that's awesome. So I'm going to say that very excellent shaping. Give yourself a fate point, Jean-Baptiste, because you did the first shaping of this particular game. And let's say that these vines that have grown up and encircled the ribbons, let's say they're actually like a species not native to Barbecia. You have not seen these. You're pretty sure that they're from a neighboring nation. The country closest to Barbecia is Domalov. You think it's quite a find. Species not native to this part of the world. How did they get here? How are they now encircling the trees here? And let's say you can actually pick up some of those fungi that are covered in water on the ground. If you want to, you can just write a note on your sheet saying that you've got fungi with you right now.
Nice.
Make me an observation check of, let's see, make me an observation check of 5 or more on the fungi.
Okay. I got a
If there's
3.
you got a 3. Yeah, I don't know if there's a skill that you can use that could potentially. I'm trying to have you identify the fungi. I don't know if there's
It
a
could be
skill that
local knowledge
local
because
knowledge. Okay,
this is something that they may have foraged.
I'll let you use local knowledge 4 of above. Go for it.
I got a 2.
2.
My
Yeah,
luck
you're
has
not
run out.
you're not sure about the edibility of the fungi or whatnot, but you have fungi in your pack now. It might be
I
edible.
feel
You
like
would
they're
assume
kind of
that.
decaying.
Yeah,
In
they're
my
kind of
mind, I'm
decaying.
imagining that maybe as we step into the water, like some of the spores are released and it kind of
Yeah.
forms this weird layer.
But it's an interesting memento of the trip to take with you. And as an
Yes.
archivist, you might want to press this into the party's chronicle that you're currently writing on. Press a few samples of it. So yeah, so let's just write on your inventory that you now have this old kind of decaying mushroom sample. And if you find a way to insert that into the fiction later, I highly encourage it. Meanwhile, let's go to Tegan. Tegan, Jean-Baptiste shaped for us this image of the invasive plant species curling around the red ribbons and the watery grounds. Is there anything you want to add to this shaping as you shape for yourself the forest?
I think
after you go through the opening that Jean-Baptiste has created.
Yeah, I think that beyond the fungi and beyond kind of this overgrowth, there is some kind of sign of previous care or cultivation that's happened here. So like it's very old, like it's completely overgrown, but there are signs that people did maintain this space in some way, that was probably, in conjunction with the natural like seasons and weather patterns, but hasn't been done so for a long, long time. But I think that there's just a hint here and there, even under the water and even with the overgrowth of some very like domestic samples of things that people would have maybe like brought out to the woods and would have been left here.
Very interesting. As you pass through the forest, I'm gonna go with that. Let's say that you see some offerings of what look like the same herbs that were in Anise's hut. And you see some offerings placed at the bases of certain trees, and a small etching in the wood of the tree, a symbol in div that basically means giving back to the wildlife. So it looks like Anise might have visited these forest trails at some point. She might have set out almost like platters in a way for the local wildlife, maybe the squirrels, maybe the voles, maybe other forest creatures. And she might have tried to give back to the forest in some fashion. And maybe she was the one that also cultivated parts of the forest, which would explain why she went into the forest with no fear.
Mm-hmm. Can I tell whether it's all the same species of tree or whether it's just maybe the location?
The trees here are all the same species.
Okay,
as
great.
you can see. Yeah, they're all the same species. So with that, I will have us go on to the next card. Great job shaping the forest card. Now we're going on to the fog card. Okay, you guys found out quite a lot about the fog. You found out about the red ribbons, and we've even worked the ribbons into our shaping process and talked about the vines wrapping around them. Because you guys found out pretty much all there was to find about the fog card, it is going to be presented rightwise instead of inverted. The fog is no longer as ominous as it once was. In fact, it seems to be parting a little bit the deeper that you get into the forest. You're seeing these ribbons on trees. You're seeing that they're slightly decayed. And yes, some of them are mismatched colors, which would probably indicate that hunters probably use this system of ribbons as well to mark places where they would find their prey. But you can see those weird plants wrapping around the ribbons as well. And you can see Anise's little offerings on various trees. So yes, there is a trail here and it has been maintained, and a select few people have traversed this trail in the past, meaning that there are no challenges for you guys here. We can go directly into the shaping process and continue this fiction about the forest that you guys are creating. So tell me, what does the fog look like for Jean-Baptiste and Tegan, and how are these ribbons and the plants and the offerings coming into play?
Kat, do you want to go first? I went first on the last one.
Yeah. I think that the fog is actually somehow almost rising from the ground. Like as it starts to thin a little bit, we can see that there is some direction to it. It's not just a thick fog bank, that it is emanating from that dampness and dankness. And along with that, I'm going to engage one of our other senses. There's a smell to the fog. And this fog it smells a little bit like decay, right? Because there's like all this mushroom and kind of all this like damp plant material here. But I think there's also something that is maybe a little bit sharper or spicier in that scent as well. Something that says, again, much like those invasive vines, that there's something just not quite of here.
Interesting. So maybe maybe there's just more evidence here that the fog has unusual origins. It's originating from something that is not native to Barbesian wilderness, and it's almost like new plant growths and uh, new bits and pieces of wilderness are kind of sprouting in the wake of this fog, changing the ecosystem of the forest itself. And you're reminded again of Anise's notes where she kind of predicted this. It's awesome. Do you want to follow up on that, Jean-Baptiste?
Yeah, I love the idea of the fog kind of rising out of the ground. I feel like my character's reaction would be this is some sort of interaction between these invasive species and potentially the minerals in the ground. You mentioned that there is like a mountain range kind of on the other side of the woods. I would imagine that due to rainfall, maybe minerals get kind of like carried from the mountains into the soil.
Ooh,
and then we have these like new plants coming in. There's this like interesting like maybe biological interaction where we get this fog. But I think just to kind of work off of the visual of like the card, the card has those like red ribbons kind of like tangled all over the vines.
Yeah, tangled all over the vines. Yeah,
I love the sort of imagery of maybe like moss growing on the vines and covering parts of the ribbons.
Yeah.
So the ribbons are actually maybe being obscured by this fast growing moss or
being
fungus.
Obscured, being reclaimed by the forest itself. And
they're beginning to look like vines too.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting. It's sort of like a, reclamation by nature. The man-made substance is kind of reverting into the materials that once composed it, and it's becoming a part of nature itself.
Yeah.
And there's a whole biological process occurring in this forest as well, where probably minerals from the mountain range are being washed away, and there's some other things going on here.
Maybe the minerals are like accelerating the growth of these invasive species, and that's why things are out of flux.
Yeah, and this hasn't even begun to account for the possible monster that exists here. There's probably a wide range of phenomenon just in the forest happening on a daily basis. So it's quite an incredible place, even if you remove the monster from the equation. Awesome. Very much in the spirit of Mappa Mundi. Good job, guys. Well, I would like to introduce you to the wetlands card. Boom, wetlands. You emerge from the fog into the wetlands, and you didn't really find out too much about the wetlands other than the fact that they're wet, because the mayor was too busy asking you to fix his problems for him and too busy forgetting to tell you much about the wetlands. So boom, the wetlands are going to be inverted. I need both of you guys to make me a traversal check of 4 or more, please.
It's a 2 at least.
It's a 2 for me.
I think we're going to be spending some time.
Well, I mean, if we combine them, it's 4.
If you combine them, it's 4, but there's not quite a combination here, because as you guys walk to these wetlands, boom, you walk directly into 2 exploding bubbles of swamp gas. The swamp gas bursts in front of you, and both of you guys fall backwards onto weak ground that starts collapsing under your weight. You are immediately covered in swamp muck, and I'm sorry to say, Jean-Baptiste, these nice clothes, they are
no longer mint.
They are no longer mint. Give me another traversal check of 3 or more, please.
Oof. 2.
Also 2.
Also 2.
We're never getting out of the swamp.
So we're not making it out. We're becoming the next 2 missing people.
You guys continue to fall downwards into the swamp, and it's a terrible, terrible situation. There is a feeling of panic that sets in as the swamp starts to just submerge you guys until finally both of you manage to grab hold of some stray branches and kind of pull yourself up with a monumental effort. But this has been a shaky experience. You have nearly suffocated, and both of you guys are going to need to rest for quite some time before you can gather the courage to continue your trek. So this has had an effect on the encounter stage of the game, which I will make a note of.
Ooh.
You better have something fancy in that overstuffed pack of yours to...
I feel like the overstuffed pack makes me sink further.
to help us,
I definitely have like a super bougie tent.
Yeah, so I mean, it has been, you're going to need to rest for about an hour to just catch your breath again and to try to, spit out the swamp water. And you notice the patterns of exploding swamp gas around you, so you won't fall into them later. But it's been a shaky time traversing this section of the forest. So I would like to invite you guys to also shape what this forest is like, but keep in mind the sort of negative experience that you've had and play off of that. Who wants to go first?
I can go.
Yeah,
go for it, Jean-Baptiste.
I definitely think that these gas bubbles is definitely the, on the vine section, we kind of talked about these like accelerated biological processes. I think the gas is definitely a byproduct of that, like 100% a byproduct of that. And we're seeing this like discoloration in like the water. They kind of look like pools, almost kind of like reflecting like the sunlight that kind of comes through the canopy, because I'm imagining this gas is like this like yellow orange color, because you mentioned that we can see it. So I think, despite the like, we're just like completely messed up. We're covered in like mud. We're covered in like rotting like plants. But I think before us is this like network of like exploding pockets of gas that I think is going to prevent us from using torches, especially. I don't know if they're flammable or anything like that. So I think the thing that I would add in the shaping would be the danger of using fire in this area.
Using fire. So luckily, it's not dark yet, but something to be wary of when you are traversing, if you have to traverse this section of the forest again by nightfall. What about Tegan? What do you have to shape in this difficult environment?
I think that in addition to the mud and decaying plant material, there are probably some leeches that come out of this swampy wetland on us as well. And so we spend part of our time picking leeches off of ourselves and each other. And as we throw the leeches back, I think that there is the shape of something deeper in the water or the muck, mouths opening, looking for some kind of meal out of these tiny bits of wildlife that we have found so far. Because, I mean, we haven't talked about what kind of animals are here, but I feel like there's...
Yeah, it's up to you. You tell me. You're shaping it.
There's animals in the woods and in this wetland part specifically that they have developed far under this boggy lair.
So are we talking like sort of like a catfish creature with sharp teeth? Like
probably something with like a little bit of teeth. Something that like kind of burrows into the mud and uses that to kind of like hide.
Have you folks heard of like itself. Have you folks heard of like beach worms?
Oh yeah, beach worms. Yeah, it could be like a beach worm.
Think of like giant beach worms just like waiting with their little like bitey mouths.
I mean, Jean-Baptiste, you're an archivist. Let's say that there is some sort of a creature species here. So in our game, we differentiate between monsters and creatures. Monsters are sort of like the boss characters, like the big monsters connected with fate. Creatures are somewhat lesser, like the regular animals, like a dog, a cat,
just like
a
the
horse.
fauna.
That's the fauna. So let's say that this is a fauna discovery here, a creature discovery that you guys found. Let's say it looks a little bit like a beachworm, but you're not exactly sure of the name of it, but you could probably make a sketch of it in your book and identify it and bring back some notes to it to the Mappa Mundi Institute. So if one of you guys, Jean-Baptiste or Tegan, if one of you guys wants to make a doodle of this
I have the
beachworm
sketch
creature,
interaction. Can I use
yeah,
that?
sketch interaction. Sure, use the sketch interaction. Make me an observation roll of 2 or above, please.
5.
5. You manage to sketch out a beautiful, beautiful image of this unusual looking beachworm creature that probably has not been ever seen before, but it's long and sinuous. It's got these spiky bits around its head. You're not sure if getting close to it is going to be too wise. You can't really discern any of its behaviors here, but you can definitely tell that this is another example of something not indigenous to Barbecia showing up in this forest. You're pretty sure you've never seen these before in Barbecia. They're probably from a neighboring country. Who knows if, the flux brought them here or maybe the monster brought them here, but it's another fascinating find. So take a fate point for that discovery, because that is a beautiful kind of impromptu example of you finding completely something completely not expected and shaping it into the narrative. So we have these beach worms here. And if you want to make a doodle or further describe them, then please let me know after the game is over, because that's a cool thing to work into the fiction.
I'll send you some pictures.
Yeah. So awesome job navigating the troubles of the wetlands. We're on to the last card here, the river card. Now, you guys managed to find Anise's journal. You deciphered her notes in Div that specifically mentioned she was following the river westward. And actually, Tegan mentioned during the last shaping process that we had, that you guys discovered leeches in the wetlands. Well, guess what your challenge would have been for the river card? It would have been leeches latching onto you guys. But you have already seen them because Tegan shaped them into the narrative ahead of time. So leeches spring up from the grounds of the river as you walk through those sandy parts, but you guys take care to avoid them. And actually, Jean-Baptiste, you mentioned fire. Well, probably not safe to use a flame in the wetlands, but actually pretty safe to use a flame by the river. And there's a few leeches that get up close to your ankles and legs because you've had to pull up your trousers to navigate. But actually, if you hold a flame to them, they fall right off. Not a problem.
We say not today, leeches.
I've got my high boots.
Yeah, I got that. So actually, yeah, the challenge would have been leeches, Kat. So excellent job for completely foretelling that.
All the fates you've
yeah. I lost the boots.
Tegan, I give you a fate point for completely predicting what the challenge is going to be.
I will say that I lost Jean-Baptiste's spare pair of boots in the wetlands. It was just so boggy and they weren't the right size for me, so they just...
I'll bill you after, don't worry.
Yeah.
As you leave those boots behind, shape the river for me, Kat. Shape the river and then maybe see the boots floating away, or just these old boots.
I feel like we've just upset the delicate ecosystem here by leaving.
We probably have, but I think that the water is... I'm going to say that the water is warmer than we expect it to be.
Interesting.
Even though it's flowing fast, and there's this sandy body or sandy bottom to the river, and I think the rocks are smooth, though. They've been here long enough that they've been worn. Not a lot of sharp, jagged edges for us to hurt ourselves on at this moment. But yeah, the water is warm but clear. This is the first time we've really seen clear water since being in this forest.
Yeah, so it's almost like you've gotten past sort of the muck on the outskirts of the forest. Now, the deeper you get inside, kind of the more pristine the water is, the more interconnected with nature everything is. It's almost like there's a central nexus point here where things are not as ominous or as creepy or as unusual as the natives have made it out to be.
So I've got a mechanics question. So you mentioned
Sure.
that like Cat foretold that leeches would be a potential a challenge at the river. Does
Mhm.
this change whether or not the card is inverted?
Technically, the way the cards are set in stone happens during the research phase, but we've sort of been playing with that a little bit. I don't know if we're going to change it for the final rule and say that you can potentially change the way a
Gotcha.
card is oriented if you actually do good shaping, which is potentially a good thing that we might need to discuss in the final rules. In the games that I've run, depending on how good the shaping is, I sometimes give some leeway in that area, or I will
Right.
certainly at least give a fate point in that area too, because that is a cool example of
Gotcha.
absolutely predicting what the game designers were thinking about. So it could be something that we activate in the final rules and kind of say that, hey, if the shaping is vivid enough to actually predict a card, then yeah, we might be able to change the position of it. But yeah, technically the position of the card is supposed to be set in stone at the research phase.
Okay, so it's
But we'll
still
see.
inverted.
Yeah, still, yeah.
Rules as written, still inverted.
Rules is written, but we'll see how
Cool.
we flex with that later. Do you want to follow up with anything that Tegan said, Jean Baptiste?
No, I like that. I wanna keep it as is.
Okay, so you guys have managed to make it past the forest, the fog, the wetlands, and the river. In the journey phase of the game, you guys can also come upon opportunities. All right, an opportunity. You can also come upon creatures too. We got a sampling of that when you encounter the beachworm. But there's like
Mhm.
the full version of the game, and the full version of this venture has like encounters with other creatures you can find in the forest. But we're leaving those out for now. We're going right to the opportunity. So an opportunity is basically an encounter with an NPC or an event that occurs. There are two potential opportunities that you guys could have found in the forest, and these represent the missing people. The first opportunity is the discovery of Elodie and Anise. You guys exit the river area and you come across that rocky, mountainous terrain that Jean Baptiste originally noticed and that you heard a little bit more about after talking with the folks in town. You can see a young woman under a tarp by sort of an outcropping on the cliffs. And she is kneeling over the body of an older woman. You would assume that the younger woman is Elodie, the older woman is Anise. Elodie is weeping and looks quite affected. And as you get a little bit closer, you see that unfortunately it looks like the older woman, Anise, is injured and has passed. What will you guys do?
I think my initial reaction will be to try to comfort and care for Elodie, knowing that I'm maybe the more people person between the two of us.
I think that's a
Um,
safe assumption. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that
So,
Jean-Baptiste is maybe the more scientific one and the more medically inclined one, perhaps.
Yeah,
so
if you could maybe comfort if you can maybe comfort Elodie and like guide her away from looking
Yeah,
at the body, I can
yes.
inspect.
So Elodie is a little confused and surprised to see two strangers, but then she's absolutely awash with grief and sort of relief as well at having two people come in to help her deal with the situation. And in between her tears and her distraught behavior, she says, "Thank you so much. None of this was supposed to happen. Anais and I, we just came here to see the root and branch monster, and but everything was just so much harder than it should have been. There was we came 2 days ago, and it was supposed to be an easy trek through the forest, but I sprained my ankle in the wetlands by falling after. Did you encounter the exploding swamp gas?
We absolutely encountered the exploding
I
swamp gas.
fell, I
Um,
tripped, I twisted my ankle left and then right. And you look down at her ankle, it's wrapped, but it's quite swollen. And then
Mhm.
we had to rest. We couldn't make it a day trip. We had to rest here overnight. She points to their provisions. They've got some camping stuff. And Anais was so understanding of all of this. She said these things happen, but I just felt so useless throughout everything. And then And then this happened early this morning. We were exploring very carefully this stretch of caves, and then further across that way, and she points and describes the way to traverse, kind of up the mountain a little bit. We were overlooking a cave, and then Anise said to me, "Shh, be quiet. It's coming, the root and branch monster." And then outside of a cave, and I'll just never forget it, this gigantic snail, almost 50 feet tall, as big as two houses put together. It emerged from the cave, and it had all of these trees growing from its back. Those were the roots and branches that the townspeople were talking about, the moving trees in the fog. But it was the strangest and the most majestic thing I'd ever seen. It was incredible. A snail so huge, and it seemed to completely ignore us and was just slithering past. And then that bastard Pierre from town, he jumped from a cliff above us and landed on the snail. And he said something like, "Oh, I've got you now." And he started hacking at the snail's shell with one of his spears. And then the snail made this terrific movement. It sucked itself back into its shell, and it began swishing those huge trees on its back and forth and to and fro. And the trees smashed into some of the rocks. And Pierre went falling off somewhere. I don't know where he went, but one of the rocks smashed Anise in the head. And she points down to Anise. There's a head injury. She's lost a lot of blood.
Yeah.
And we barely got out of there. And the last couple of hours, I've been a mess. I've been in shock.
Can I kind of if this was their campsite, can I kind of build up a little fire for her to kind of warm her up? I'm going to raid Jean-Baptiste's pack for a pot, and I definitely carry herbs and stuff with me to be able to help calm her down. I'm also going to raid your pack for blankets, anything warm to keep this
I've
poor
got
girl
all of that
comfortable.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
sure. That's awesome. Make me let's make me a deduction roll of 2 or above if you can, to try to whip up a concoction of herbs and stuff to calm Elodie down.
That's a 6.
That's a 6.
When it counts.
You brew a concoction of herbs, something just to calm the nerves. This is an 18-year-old who's in shock. She's obviously came here on essentially a field trip, and it went horribly south. And she's probably been alone for the last, well, she said this happened in the morning, so probably the last 5 to 6 hours just trying to deal with this. So yeah, you managed to brew together. You tell me what it is. Is it a drink? Is it something she can smell and just kind of go to sleep? How is it calming her down?
I think it's a drink. I think that it has, some chamomile, some mint.
Chamomile, yeah.
Just, things to soothe and comfort, maybe a little bit of lavender as well in there.
Mm-hmm.
And that, as I make this for her to drink, that I'm kind of also explaining that fate doesn't let us move in ways that we're not supposed to. We obviously have freedom to choose our paths and how we weave into the full pattern of everything. But that, Anise chose to be here, and that, yes, it's sometimes the choices of others are absolutely devastating for us. And don't even worry about Pierre. We will take care of him once we're sure that you and Anise are fine and as well as can be, and that we've settled this. So yeah,
give yourself a fate point. Yeah, give yourself a fate point. You definitely managed to calm her down a little bit. I mean, she's still in shock, but
yeah.
Thanks to the calming herbs and your words, you managed to get her in a state where she's not just rocking back and forth. And she begins to ask you some where you're from, and ask you a little bit of question about the Mappa Mundi Institute. She says, so you're from the Institute? And you get the sense that she's heard of it before. She might have heard of the divination schools that are there. Not quite as good as Omen, but they've obviously produced someone with skills like yourself. And you can see that this young woman is sort of kind of turning towards you as the authority, motherly / big sister figure here, especially since Anise was taken from her. So you've really calmed her down.
Yeah, and I'll like pull out my cards even a little bit and like fan them out to just keep her occupied, and to encourage this interest in something that's not her immediate situation and surroundings.
This does a lot. This does a lot. And I mean, after a while, actually, Elodie starts to fall asleep. She seems just devastatingly exhausted, and just very tired. She's kind of crashing and coming down. Jean-Baptiste, are you doing anything at this interval?
So Elodie mentioned that Pierre tried to kill a snail but was thrown off.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any sign of Pierre in the area?
You're not sure at the moment, because the way Elodie pointed, probably the scene where the snail emerged, and you now
further
know
away.
The root and branch monster is obviously a snail. Further away, but not that far. I mean, you could explore beyond this area and be kind of further up the mountain or kind of around the other side, maybe 15 minutes in one direction.
Yeah, I think when they're doing that, I might do a little bit of scouting. I'll leave my pack. I'll travel a little light, and I'll scout ahead after hearing about what happened.
Sure. So this is grand because it actually takes us to the next opportunity. The other opportunity would be an encounter with Pierre. Now, Pierre actually could have shown up dead as well, but you guys specifically searched his room. Not everybody does that. So you're meeting Pierre alive. Now, I will say that it is possible to encounter Anise alive as well. But, sometimes things don't work out. And you guys actually didn't speak with Elodie's father. If there had been more on that path to potentially find Anise alive on that path. But it can happen either way. Some games Anise is alive. Some games she's dead. In this
great replayability.
Great replayability. In this particular game, Pierre is alive and not dead. You, Jean-Baptiste, walk about 15 minutes because you really trust Tegan to take care of this girl. She's much better than you are at this sort of thing. You want to find the bastard that did this, and see the gall of this man.
Yeah, I'm so tough.
You got these gloves on. You tough as hell.
Yeah, big gloves,
locked in. Archivist,
catch hands.
So you go a little bit further down the mountain, and you see a man with a very finely pruned mustache. He is addressing a broken arm. He's got an arm in a sling. He has 2 spears, one of which he's using to support himself, and he's kind of like tying the sling with his mouth, like just readjusting it. He's got another broken, shattered spear on the ground. He's got a rucksack as well. He looks like a very physically fit individual, and quite impressive in some way, but you know that this man is not a note-taker, and you surely best him in this arena. So he sniffs as you emerge. He catches your eye, kind of spits on the ground, and says, "Oh, another one come to face the root and branch monster? Hello.
You must be Pierre."
Oh, yes, you know of me. You've heard of me. Yes, I am Pierre.
I have definitely heard of you. I am Jean-Baptiste of Mappa Mundi.
Oh, Jean-Baptiste. Not a bad name.
Yeah.
What can I do for you, Jean-Baptiste? I am wounded. I am a busy man. I have undergone a great ordeal, and I must be on my way.
Well, that is actually perfect, because
I give you 5 minutes of my time.
I need less than that. I'm here just to make sure. I'm gonna lie. I'm not gonna say that I'm here to hunt the thing, because I don't want him to think that he should try to help me. I'm here to actually find you and make sure that you get out of the woods safe.
Oh, the mayor sent you after me?
Yes, the mayor cares very deeply about you.
No, I do not believe that. The mayor is a bumpkin, as is everyone else in this town. But I appreciate your skill required to traverse the woods. It's not bad. You are a man who knows his way about the wilderness. I can see with you. What do you? He looks you over for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the Mappa Mundi Institute. Yeah, you draw the little pictures of the monsters. You take the little.
I draw the pictures. I take the notes.
Very good. Yes. You realize that Pierre draws the pictures too. Pierre draws the pictures too. Actually, he draws this crafty little
things.
It's actually probably a snail shell, now that you think about it.
Yeah. Now I also draw pictures, and I might, because I have my notebook on a sling, I'll show him some of my impressive illustrations, like that of the beach worm.
Ugh, those repulsive things in the wetlands. I made a clear avoidance of them. Very, very good pictures. I dare say when you find the root and branch monster, it will be harder to draw pretty little pictures of it for that creature. Oh, if you make it angry, it will shake and shake and shake.
I've heard that you made it angry.
I was a man seeking a prize, and I got what I came for. I am happy with the results.
The prize of a broken arm.
No, this is what us in the field call a flesh wound, a wound of war. I am normally a man who operates at 110%. Today I am merely operating at 99% because of this wound, but I have got what I came for.
Suboptimal. What were you coming for here?
That is not for me to share with you, Comrade Jean-Baptiste. That is for me to know and for you to not bother me about. You think that he's probably, you see him kind of pulling on that pack that was sort of on the ground.
Yeah, I was like, can I look like give him the up and down just to kind of see if he's carrying something?
Yeah, make me an observation roll, please, of 3 or above.
3 exactly.
3 exactly. Oh, yeah, he got something in the pack. Probably, it looks bulky, but he's covering it up. You suspect that you're not sure what it is. He's gotten what he came for.
He's gotten what he came for. And he's propping himself up with this like spear.
Yeah.
And he's got that arm.
Make me another observation roll of also 3 or above this time, specifically on the spear.
Because I have behaviorist as well. I haven't used
behaviorist.
Skill
yeah, use behaviorist. Give me a. Let's see, because it's behaviorist and a skill. I'll make it 2 or above. Decrease the difficulty.
I rolled a 3.
You rolled a 3. Behaviorist. You look at the spear. The spear has the symbol of a snake with a lightning bolt going through it. You've seen this before. This is the symbol of the Forked Vipers. It is a taxidermist crime group in the capital city of Moltiers. They employ various hunters to go out and often find animals, monsters, wildlife for them so that they can stuff and deliver to the households of wealthy nobles. There's also some poaching involved and some illegal hunting trips. They also sell hunting licenses that are not kosher. So
I have no problem kicking the spear out from under him and having him fall down.
Do you want to kick the spear out from under him?
Now that I know that, I'm going to kind of, knowing that I have a friend not too far away, I'll be like, oh, perfect. Well, I'll walk back with you.
Okay. Yeah. You walk back with him? Okay. So are you saying, we'll walk back this way?
Yeah, we'll walk back that way. Because if he's using I know he's saying he's at 99%, but he's clearly using the spear as a crutch in some way.
Yeah. Okay. So make me a deduction roll to try to appeal to his ego and to try to get him to go along with this plan.
Yeah. What's the difficulty?
5 or more.
Oh, I have 2 fate points.
You do.
And can I just invoke a fate point to succeed?
Do a roll.
I'll roll first. I rolled a 3. Wow.
Roll a 3. Invoke. Okay. You burn a fate point. I'll say you can turn that into a success automatically without making a roll. He's like, well, if you wish to be my manservant, I will not say no. You will escort me on the way back. I could use a meat shield like you. You move forward. Be my butler. So
okay,
you can walk alongside him. You walking alongside to where exactly? Where are you leading?
I'm gonna walk until I'm within view for Tegan, and I'm gonna kind of make a signal to Tegan that this is Pierre.
And then what are you gonna do?
I kind of want to just turn around and kick the spear out from under him, and have him fall over.
Make a traversal check.
Oh, that's my worst skill.
Make a traversal check, 3 or more.
Oh god, at least I have 1 more fate point. What is that? Oh, it's D4. Oh, it's a 2.
It's a 2. Would you like to use your fate point?
I'll burn the fate point because I think I'll be okay. I think I'll be okay with the encounter with the snail later.
Okay,
but I'm not built for fighting.
What's really important is knocking this poacher on his butt right now.
You burn the fate point, and your aim is not quite true at first, but then the fate smile upon you, and you kick his makeshift crutch out of the way, and Pierre is like, "Sacre bleu!" and then just starts. Pierre falls down sideways onto the broken arm, and he actually it's actually kind of bad. Like he falls and it kind of tumbles a little bit down this slope. He just falls and he lands in a heap, just kind of like he's just yelling at he's because he landed on the bad arm. He's not in a state to really react right now. You caught him off guard. What are you guys gonna do?
I'm going to sprint over first of all, like as quickly as I can, and I'm also going to try and muffle his shouts because I don't want him to wake up Elodie. Who's finally asleep. So not in a mean way, but like in a practical way, like using some cloth or something to kind of muffle his shouts.
You can tie him up. You can subdue him.
I've got rope.
You got rope. Okay, you can tie him up.
I want to know what's in the bag.
How dare you do this to me? And he just can't talk anymore. So it's funny. You guys are not the law, really. You have no real authority in subduing a poacher, but at the same time,
citizens arrest.
Yeah, we're definitely not cops. Just so
we're not cops.
We're definitely not cops, but we have a strong sense of what you do in the wilderness and what you don't. So as I'm tying him up, I will also make sure that like his arm is relatively like set properly and stuff. We're not cruel. We're not monsters.
Yeah. You can kind of pop his arm back into place, which makes him like make loud noises underneath the muffler that you've got at him. But yeah, you can take a look at the bag, Jean-Baptiste. Inside the bag, you can see beautiful iridescent pieces of a snail shell. Even in the late afternoon fog of the azure wood, the shell seems to scintillate with amazing light. Pierre clearly was just trying to chip away at a piece of the shell because you think that surely there are folks who would want this to be displayed on their mantelpiece and would pay excellent money for this. The Forked Vipers probably told him to get back some interesting part of the root and branch monster that would be worth a fortune, and you think that this would be worth a fair amount of money back in the black market. Okay. You also get the impression that Pierre is probably a middleman. He's probably not a Forked Vipers member. He's probably a freelancer that does jobs for them, which doesn't necessarily make it any better. But yeah, he knows who he works for. He knows who he works for, definitely.
Okay. Well, I'm going to hang on to those.
Write it in your character sheet that you've got pieces of the root and branch monster shell.
Got it. We want to make sure he's secure. Anise is hopefully still sleeping.
Yeah, and I will say actually Pierre...
Anise, Elodie.
Elodie. Yeah, Elodie is asleep, and I will say Pierre passes out because it is pretty. You've made him fall on his wound. It's not great. He does kind of 99% my ass. He does pass out after a bit. Still, he's still alive. He'll be okay, but his arm is going to be rough. This has been a tough journey for everyone who went missing in the woods. Unfortunately, there's one casualty, and Elodie is obviously quite shaken, suffered a sprained ankle, and Pierre himself got a broken arm,
broken ego. Yeah, I think I'm gonna first of all inform Tegan of the Pierre's connection to the Forked Vipers.
I assumed that you had a reason for tripping an injured man, Jean-Baptiste. I mean, I know that.
I'm glad you think so highly of me.
But this is
Jean-Baptiste displaying a surprising amount of physicality on this trip with his gloves and his kicks.
My gloves, so prepared. I'm like Data from the Goonies.
This is it's concerning to me that the Forked Vipers know of this monster and in fact are ahead of us in getting here. That's concerning to me a little bit. And so I do think that if we have an opportunity to somehow set things right,
send it away,
that we should take that opportunity. I know that isn't normally what we would do. We would normally just observe and bring back our observations. But in this case, I do feel as though we have strong reason to believe that the monster is imminently under threat.
Yeah, we could observe and see if it was like lured here or something like that. And then we can kind of make a decision afterwards.
And this is actually a fantastic segue into the encounter phase, the last phase of the game. So as you guys are discussing things back and forth, you've got two unconscious bystanders nearby. You actually turn around at the sound of slithering and the swishing of trees, and you finally catch a glimpse of what you've been trekking all this time. There's a patch of trees that suddenly seems to appear out of the fog, and the trees are gnarled, and there's roots and branches sticking out of them. And the branches are actually resembling fingers that are beckoning you to draw closer and closer. But as this gigantic snail moves into your vision, you see that no, they aren't fingers. It is the trees on its back. So this is the root and branch monster right here.
Hell yeah.
The gigantic snail emerging from its cave further in the mountain. And I've got a bigger picture of it here. Yeah. There it is.
So beautiful.
Yeah, that's dope.
So this takes us to the encounter phase. So think of this as almost like a boss battle. All right. Except you're not attacking the snail. You're trying to unlock all of its behaviors. So I will say this. The snail has 8 behaviors. It is awfully hard to unlock all 8 of them. Most of the groups that we run this for manage to unlock anywhere between 3 to 6. So if you manage to unlock more than that or around that number, that's awesome. I would like you guys to direct your attention to the final section of the Chronicle sheet where it says encounter phase. If you look down at the behavioral log section, you'll see a section that says monster. Don't worry about the creature and NPC part for now. But under the monster section, you can see 8 spaces. Each space represents one of the monster's behaviors. Now, monsters in Mappa Mundi, they have this thing called a posture. Okay, the posture can either be passive or aggressive. Don't take these two literally. Aggressive does not mean that the monster will attack you. It just means that it's on edge. Okay,
Right.
Passive means that it is relaxed and not in any imminent danger, and you're not in any imminent danger. Okay. Now, 8 behaviors. The way we represent behaviors is are by threads. There are 8 behavioral threads, okay? And you can see there's a little symbol on the character sheet, 2 circles connected by a line that represents the thread. So a thread can be intact, severed, or frayed. An intact thread means it's a behavior that can be unlocked by you guys and shaped into existence. A severed thread means that behavior cannot be found by you guys. It is locked off forever. A frayed thread means that behavioral thread is a little wobbly, is in danger of not being discoverable anymore. So at the start of this encounter, we're going to look at the root and branch monster's posture and determine whether it's passive or aggressive. The way I do that is by looking at the cards that you guys traverse during the journey phase. If the majority of the cards were rightwise, then the creature is passive. If the majority were inverted, then it is aggressive.
I think it's aggressive then, right?
Forest card was inverted. Fog was rightwise. Wetlands was inverted. And river was rightwise. Actually, we have a tie.
Oh, did we? We said the river was rightwise.
Yeah, it was actually rightwise.
Sweet.
Yeah. So one of you guys is going to make me a tie-breaking roll. Roll me a die. On an even result, the creature is going to be passive. On an odd result, it is going to be aggressive.
Kat, you've got this. I believe in you. Believe in the
I
dice.
rolled so many ones today, though, Daniel.
Yeah, but you've also rolled a lot of 2s.
I'm going to roll my 1d6 that has given me a 6. The Dice Envy one. And I got a 4.
A 4. So it is even. So actually, in that case, the root and branch monster, it is passive.
Yep.
Which means that normally all of its 8 threads would be intact, except previously when you guys were traversing the wilderness, you spent an hour resting after you guys were in the wetlands. You did kill some time. You had to. Mm-hmm. And so that means that one of its threads is severed. So on your character sheet, put an X through like the last thread there, number 8, you will be able to discover a potential of 7 behaviors. Unfortunately, because you had to rest for a little bit while traveling, this means that you guys unfortunately killed some time and missed the chance to observe a behavior that might have been time sensitive. And it also means that you guys are also pretty dang smelly and still covered with swamp muck. And you notice that as the root and branch monster, this gigantic snail, is moving above you, it seems to be kind of avoiding you guys, perhaps because the scent and the muckiness of both of you is permeating the area.
So this means that the max we could possibly get is 7 now?
Max you can possibly get is 7.
Okay.
But all of the other threads are intact. There are none that are frayed. There are none that are severed at the moment. So now I invite you guys to start with your interactions and see if you guys can unlock those behaviors. Each interaction is potentially automatically linked to a behavior as long as you succeed on the roll. Once you exhaust your interactions, then I invite you to either use your skills or just general ability checks. The DC for those is going to be a little bit higher. Okay.
Gotcha.
Because they're not specifically meant for this stage of the game. But yeah, start with your interactions and see what you can unlock.
This thing is passive but cautious.
Mm-hmm.
A thought. I technically have the fragments of the snail shell. Does that mean I already succeed on take samples?
That means that you don't really succeed necessarily on take samples, but it means that you can use the fragments of the shell in some way to unlock a behavior of this monster.
Okay, I'll save that one for later then. I'd like to sketch
the
DC this thing.
The DC will be quite low. Yeah, so sure, you can sketch. So that's pretty simple. Observation check of just 2 or above.
5.
So this check is to basically determine the nuance of your sketch. You unlock the stone spiral shell behavior. You can write that down as number 1. So the stone spiral shell is a geometric marvel. As you sketch it, you notice that the upper regions of it have actually petrified and partially turned to stone, and they've provided a pebbly bedrock for the trees growing atop it. Jean-Baptiste, I mean, how much do you know about regular snails, Jean-Baptiste?
Know a fair amount about snails. They're part of the botanical ecosystem.
Yeah, so you know that the shells of normal snails, they grow a bit thicker the older that they become. In the case of this root and branch monster, it's probably safe to assume that the older the snail becomes, the more its shell petrifies and then grows plant life. You assume that the root and branch monsters probably enjoyed a lifespan of about 3 or 4 decades, judging by the size of the trees on its back and the petrified nature of that bedrock. Do you want to shape anything based off of these factoids that I've given you?
Man, I think kind of like if we're saying this like rock has like grown on its shell, I mean like the inside of a snail shell has this sort of like iridescent quality to it. I want to make it like a tree where in addition to the spirals, the vividness of maybe the exposed parts of the shell, since there was damage to it, so we could see the side of it. Maybe the vividness is also a marker of its age, and with every decade of growth, you add a new color to the swirls.
Fantastic. And actually, I'm going to say that you also unlock the wounded behavior because you specifically ran into Pierre and you have specifically focused on the shell right now. So yeah, wounded is another behavior that you can potentially unlock with the sketch interaction. So you, Jean-Baptiste, you can see that there's several cracks in the upper region of the shell. And this was clearly the work of Pierre, his spear digging in back and forth. Obviously, that's all you can tell right now. If you get a little bit closer, there might be some more interesting things that you could discern from that. Or if you dare to climb the snail shell, you could also get a better vantage point.
My traverse is really bad.
Yeah,
I think let's wait on that one.
What about? Yeah,
we'll
wait on anything that higher chance of failure. I don't have fate points. I spent them all hurting an injured person.
Two behaviors. Two behaviors.
So, Kat, we're almost at the average.
5 more. Yeah.
We can't just do the average, though. We are not average Mappa Mundi scholars.
That would just be a fail. That would just be a fail.
Exactly. Okay. I'm going to start with my read interaction to try and determine kind of like read whether it's kind of headed in the direction of water or maybe some kind of food source, or like, you know, what its current movement kind of indicates. I mean, this is a large creature, and we know that it's not immediately aggressive.
So I'll say this. Read is not specifically linked to any of the root and branch monster's behaviors. So one of the root and branch monster's threads becomes frayed, not severed, but a little bit wobbly, because as you try to read it, as you try to get a glimpse of its movements, this is a gastropod. It's not a mammal. It has very few identifiable like features that you can relate to. It's awfully hard to read its mental state or kind of figure out what it's doing. It's very alien to you, and you can sense that it probably is kind of avoiding you guys because of your smell or the muck around you, but that's really all you can get. And so, one of its threads draws a squiggle through it. It's frayed, not severed. You can still potentially unlock it, but if you fail again or try using an inappropriate interaction, then that thread will become severed next.
I can use skills in addition to interactions. So like if
you can use skills in addition to interactions, the roll might be a little bit tougher.
Right.
But tell me how you want to use the skill, and we can work with that.
Can we intentions? I can try to telegraph through my own kind of body language and aura of being that our intentions are not the same as the interaction that this snail had earlier in the day with Pierre, and that we're here for a different reason.
Give me a deduction roll of 5 or more.
5.
Ooh, nice.
5. Well done. So tell me how you're signaling to the snail to make your intentions clear. Shape that for me.
I think that despite the fact that it is already so much larger than we are, I think that it is going to be kind of a crouching behavior, very slow movements, almost like fluid in nature, to try to indicate that there's no harm intended, and that we don't want to interfere. We just want to observe by this like very low, slow, fluid movement of posture.
So that's good. You make a slow, fluid movement of posture, and you unlock the defensive behavior. You can write down defensive as the third behavior you unlock.
Okay.
So the root and branch monster is not exactly aggressive, but once again, it is a snail, and it's kind of hard to communicate with. So as you start moving, it does start to do the behavior that the defensive behavior that Pierre mentioned before. It starts to kind of withdraw on its shell, and it begins to shake the trees on its back and forth, and this massive roots and branches on its shell, it kind of contracts and expands, almost like it's forming an additional barrier that can absorb any blows. But as you get more into that fluid posture, the snail relaxes and then sort of slithers in your direction a little bit and subsides in the shaking.
So the thought, when this thing is shaking the trees, do any leaves fall? Does anything fall off of its shell that I could potentially collect with take samples?
Absolutely, yes. Make me a take samples roll of so that's going to be that relies upon your traversal. This is going to be easier. Give me 2 or above.
What's that? 3.
3. Yeah. So you managed to find samples of a lot of the vegetations that you previously saw traversing the wilderness, including those invasive vines that have been circling the trees and the ribbons. It's, it kind of fits in with this theory that the snail perhaps is a visitor from abroad, so to speak, but slithered in from perhaps the neighboring nation of Domalov or whatnot, or maybe even from underground, and has brought with it
all these
plant
invasive
life,
plants.
invasive plants, or even not even necessarily invasive, but things that are not native to this region that have actually been slowly changing the ecosystem. You gain a wide variety of those samples that you can press into your nose. And you also actually, as the snail is moving, you notice the slimy mucus that it has been creating under its underbelly. So you actually also unlock the slime trails behavior.
Cool.
So the mucus is harmless, but it is very, very slippery. Luckily, with your take samples roll, you not only manage to grab some of that plant life, but you can bottle up some of the mucus as well. There's actually a lot of slime that you can bottle up. I don't know if you how many flasks or jars you have on
I'm just
you.
gonna just get as much as possible.
Okay, there's enough slime to fill 5 jars. Like you could
Nice.
you could fill 5 jars of snail slime. This is a highly viscous material. Actually, as you touch it, Jean-Baptiste, you find that it's very tingly. It reinvigorates the skin. Actually, if you use this on yourself, it relieves the effects of a minor injury. So none of you guys got injured, but if you had, you could smear snail stuff on yourself and actually feel a bit better afterwards. Jean-Baptiste, this is quite the discovery. You sense that
we can use this on Elodie.
Yeah, smear it on Elodie, or put it on Pierre. You can maybe even heal his broken arm. But maybe you don't want to.
I was going to say, maybe we don't use our magical snail goo on the poacher.
No.
Maybe not.
Yeah, but you can write down that you've got the snail samples.
Okay, so that's 4.
Okay,
4 of 7.
Will you give me 1 jar though?
Yes, of course.
I don't know if I want to do this yet.
Would you use its slime on itself, on its wound?
That's kind of where I'm thinking, but before I do that, because my only other interaction is touch. And so I think now that I've kind of started moving in a way that is trying to indicate good intentions, I'm going to try to touch the body of the snail, not the shell to start, because I already know that the shell is damaged and is probably sensitive in those areas. So let's start with regular snail.
Make me a traversal roll of 2 or more.
Oh, okay, I can do that. It's a 3.
You could do that. Nice.
Yeah.
3. You unlock the cold-blooded behavior.
Okay.
So you can carefully lay your hands on the soft body of the snail, which sends a very tingly sensation to the fingers. And you can actually lay your hands on the shell as well, which feels especially cold. Now, you can tell that the snail doesn't generate its own heat. Its body temperature is controlled by the environment, which means that the wet atmosphere of this wood is an excellent place for the snail to live. And as you continue to touch, you can touch some of those slime trails as well. And you actually get a sense that, hey, these slime trails probably evaporate and have created and contributed to the fog in the forest.
Okay.
So now you understand why the ecosystem has changed far more. I mean, the snail is bringing these big alterations as it slithers through the wilderness, and that's why the fog has been so thick lately.
Yeah. I guess, Jean-Baptiste, is there anything else that you want to try before I try climbing the snail a little bit to see if I can heal it?
Okay, so I've done my sketch and I've done my take samples. We know that it's wounded. We know it's defensive. We've got the slime trails. The slime trails evaporate, so it's not like we're going to be able to see the direction which it came from, though we kind of have a general idea. I guess, Jeremy, you've mentioned that the plants and stuff kind of indicate that it's from a region. I forget the name.
Mm-hmm. Down below.
So I don't need to roll for that.
Or maybe from underground. You're not exactly sure. Maybe it's just from somewhere deep underground or a tunnel. Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, if it tunneled, then these trees would not be as high.
Depends on how high the tunnel was.
And you said this thing was in the... Yeah, that's true. You said this thing was in a cave. Hiding in a cave. Is it possible to see in the cave, to see whether or not it came from a cave tunnel? Maybe it was from within the cave, or whether it was just kind of sheltering itself in the cave?
So that is probably good because you don't have an applicable interaction. That's going to be an exploration roll or a skill if you can make me a compelling argument for one of your skills.
I could use
maybe behaviorist.
Yeah, I was about to say I think behaviorist because this thing is passive, but it's also defensive. Is it sheltering itself inside this cave because it was being pursued by hunters like Pierre, or is it sheltering in this cave because it's protecting something? Has it laid eggs?
For that you're gonna need me behavior observational of 5 or above.
Oh, come on. Nope, that's a 3.
No, that's not a 3. Yeah, 3. So that doesn't quite make it. So so that frayed thread severs. And so now
so there's only one more we can get now.
One more you can get. Yeah. You're not exactly sure how to follow this snail to its cave. You can certainly try again if you want to, but once again, if you fail, then the thread will fray, and then fail again, it might sever.
Kat, I think you should just do your thing.
One more behavior.
I think, yeah. I mean, this could be the most hideous idea that Tegan has ever had in the field. But I am going to try to use either touch or intentions or whispers to kind of climb the snail far enough that I can reach kind of some of those cracks and injuries. I'm going to take one of the jars of snail slime with me, and I'm going to try to smooth over and start helping this snail to heal.
Do you want to take the fragments and kind of like put them in place?
I can try. Yeah.
Let's go with whispers then. Maybe the whispers of fate can tell you where to put your hands and feet as you climb.
Okay.
So let's make that a deduction roll of 4 above if you can.
I can do this.
I can do it.
That's another 6. I really like this die. Yes.
Awesome. You listen to the whispers of fate, and the whispers tell you to take the shell fragments and then put your hands here, your feet here, and climb and climb. Move to the left, move to the right, and climb and climb and climb. And you follow these whispers. Before you know it, Jean-Baptiste, you were looking at Tegan, who is following the footsteps of fate itself and climbing on top of the snail's shell, climbing and climbing and climbing to the tippy top place where the wound is. Tegan, you can place down the fragments of snail shell mixed with the slime trails that you have taken with you, and you unlock the regeneration behavior.
It's a very
the
Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, you place the slime trail down on the snail's back and place the fragments of the shell down there as well. And then you see that actually the snail is already regenerating fragmented sections of its shell. It's secreting a translucent substance over the cracks. So this substance looks similar to the snail's shell, to the snail slime trails upon first glance, but then it quickly is hardening into a protective film over the injuries. And once you add the existing slime trail mixture, like it's almost like the hardening process happens even faster. So Jean-Baptiste, you kind of observed this as well. Jean-Baptiste, you know a little bit about snails. Some snails can regrow portions of their shells if the damage is not too great. The process usually takes a long while. The root and branch monster is clearly far more powerful than its tiny counterparts and is actually healing itself at a rapid rate. Probably in an hour or so, Pierre's efforts to make a permanent dent in it are going to be completely forgotten about. So with that, you guys have encountered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You've unlocked 6 behaviors, which makes you guys into the upper echelon of folks who have played this adventure. So with that, actually, Tegan, your position on top of the shell gets a little bit shaky. The fates kind of guide you along a route that lets you slide down like a big old slide.
Before I leave the snail's back, can I take a moment to kind of just put my hand flat, like on kind of whatever substrate material is there. So whether it's shell or petrified shell or soil, even that the trees are growing in, and say thank you to the snail. And also from one of my other pockets, I'm going to take a few seeds and just sprinkle them in the soil that's there.
That's awesome.
Before so I come down.
Yeah, kind of contributing to the growth on its
I like the cross-pollination there.
Yeah, some interesting cross-pollination. So yeah, you can slide down a root, and after having contributed to the snail's shell, seems that the snail has lost interest in this particular scene in front of it. So it begins to depart from this section of the rocky lands where you guys are standing, and the fog, the evaporated trails suddenly obscure it, and you can hear the swish and gentle crack of a few branches as it moves away through the blackness and then is lost completely. This takes us to the epilogue of our adventure. You guys have witnessed the root and branch monster. You've unlocked 6 of its behaviors. You've actually also managed to find all 3 of the missing people as well. So, what do you guys want to do with Pierre, first of all?
I mean, we have to take him back to town because he does need to play the mayor.
He will face their local justice.
Okay, so you take Pierre back to town, and you can also take Anise and Elodie back to town.
He also has a tab that he has to pay.
Yeah, there were enough supplies in Elodie and Anise's pack where you could kind of fashion a makeshift sled to kind of transport Anise's body, and it takes a while to make it back to town, but you manage to return to town, right as night is starting to get dark. Moving through the wetlands is difficult, but as long as you know where the swamp pockets are, it's easier to avoid them. So you make it back to town. Pierre is still gagged, and he's still kind of out of it, still a little woozy, but he's like cursing under his breath. He's got the gag, and he's like, but you can deliver him to the mayor, who's like, "Oh, I knew this one was a rotten piece of work. We'll report him to the proper authorities back in the capital, and he'll get what's coming to him." And so the mayor is also examining Pierre's hunting license and being like, "Is this legal? Is this legal?" And it's like flapping it in his face and whatnot. Pierre looks very pissed. Pierre will remember this. If this were a campaign, Pierre would definitely make another appearance later and be back for revenge.
You know what? He has to count on his memory because he takes crap notes.
That is true. Regarding Anise and Elodie, so Anise unfortunately has died, and so over the next couple days in town, there is a funeral that is held for the old witch, and a lot of people turn out. They pay their respects to her, and Sylvie blesses her in this moving funeral speech and calls her, "Oh, she was such a noble personage. She's now joined the essence of fate's loom." It's a nice affair. You get the sense that probably Anise was not really appreciated that much by the townsfolk while she was still alive. But there's a lot of people talking about, "Oh, what are we going to do now for medicine now that she's not around to sell herbs to us," and stuff like that. So it's a sad affair. And poor Elodie is quite distraught throughout this whole thing. You see her father, her grumpy father, Guillaume, who you notice is like a curmudgeonly, 50-year-old man. I mean, he's quite happy to have his daughter back, but he's there at the funeral, and he's like trying to calm her down, but not really doing a good job of it. Yeah.
At the funeral,
Elodie's in a rough state. Yeah. What will you guys do?
Does Anise obviously still has her bones with her? I'm thinking it's the D6 that's the travel one.
Yeah, her oracle bones. Yeah.
I think I would have found some time to ask whether Elodie already has a travel oracle bone or not.
And Elodie does not have her own travel bone to represent the fact that she would one day go off into the wilderness. She does not have her own.
I think that in consulting with Sylvie, then I would put together an opportunity to somewhat privately, because I don't want to make it a display, but privately pass on Aeneas's travel bone to Elodie then. And, offering that she can come back to the city with us if she would like, to, continue on that part of her journey. If she feels like she needs to stay here, then like giving her an address where she can write to us, so that when she is ready, either we'll come back to help her get to the city, or, someone else from the Institute, like one of our colleagues, can come and help her make that traversal, because the wilds are so far. So I think that that's how I'd want to make it meaningful for her in this moment, and to try and find some consolation as well as connection with Aeneas going forwards.
This has a major impact. It really, really affects Elodie. She gives you a hug, a very long hug, and just seems to deeply appreciate the fact that you care so much. She says, I'm going to stay here for a little while longer. I need to work things out with my father and reunite with my sister for a bit, and just process everything that happened. But I would like to write to you. I always looked to Omen as the place where I would one day be able to escape Gascar, but maybe the Mappa Mundi Institute would be willing to accept someone like me if I worked hard and maybe submitted a report on the root and branch monster. What do you think?
Absolutely. Write up your notes and your observations, and if you have time, go back to Aeneas's hut and, go back to the paths that she showed you through the woods, and care for them in the way that she taught you. And as you keep that journal, then yes, send reports, and if you address them to me, I will make sure they get to the right people at the Institute. We have so few chroniclers who are stationed out this far that any knowledge of the world and what you find would be welcome.
That definitely you can put in a good word for young Elodie. And certainly, the Institute is quite welcoming with people, especially young people kind of stuck in the boonies who might want to advance themselves and aren't exactly
Scholarships,
sure
maybe?
the way to do it. Yeah, there are definitely scholarships. And so, this will probably go a long way. And you have a feeling that, as Elodie looks at you, Tegan, with an inspired light in her eyes, Anise might have sadly passed, but there is still hope for Elodie. And if this were a campaign, Elodie would remember this and would come back in the future. And last but not least, there is the root and branch monster itself. Sylvie and the mayor talk with you guys afterwards for a debriefing, and the mayor's like, well, so is the monster a threat to Gascar? And Sylvie's like, is it a symbol of fate? Like, what should we do with it?
I would just say that it's it's a part of the natural world, and fate had brought it to the Azura Wood for a time, and now fate has led it away.
So, do you think we still need to fear about people going missing, or poachers like Pierre coming through?
I think there will always be dangers associated with the wood, but if you work as a community, it should be safe.
And also maybe just double check those hunting licenses before.
Yeah, and be really good on your admin.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, says the mayor. Yeah, I checked too, and the paperwork for Pierre is sound, but I don't know. I might try to sabotage it a little bit because this guy's a bastard. He goes up to Pierre. The town has they don't really have a jail or anything like that, but they've locked Pierre in his old room actually before transporting him back to the capital. And he's like, you hear that, Pierre? He knocks on the door. You're going to pay for your crimes. And Pierre is still gagged inside. You can hear him just be like, where's that guy that kicked me?
I didn't kick him. I kicked his crutch.
But yes, so the best ending here would be if you had managed to unlock at least 3 behaviors of the root and branch monster. And you guys did. You unlocked 6. So the fiction that you have created of the monster to unlocking these behaviors is that it's something of a benevolent monster, and it watched over Gascar from a distance for a time and has now disappeared back into the mists with the trees on its great shells swaying to and fro. And that is the end of Root and Branch.
Yay!
Thank you so much.
I took 5 pages of notes.
Awesome. Yeah, you would have definitely filled out our Chronicles sheet. We're going to hopefully include an extended one in the final version of the game for folks that like to take lots of notes. Yeah, so basically now, in the full version of the game, now would be where we kind of debrief about what you guys felt about the mission. And now, if we were playing physically, it would be like, hey, assemble those notes into an actual chronicle, like a folder that we can all keep contributing to as we play more adventures. Because if I were to continue this as a campaign, obviously Pierre would come back. I'd elaborate on the Forked Vipers story thread, and Elodie would play a recurring role.
I like it. I love it.
Mm-hmm. So much
and we're
fun.
going to explore this more on another episode of Asians Represent, because we're going to do an episode where we just talk about the mechanics and the inspiration behind Mappa Mundi.
We are. So I will say that there's quite a bit of replayability. Once again, Pierre could have been deceased. Anise could have survived. You could have talked to Elodie's father for more insight into her home situation. She has a sister as well that you could have communicated with. There were more cards that you could have unlocked in the forest. There was a clearing card. There was a lake as well. So lots of other environments. I had to cut it a little bit short because of time constraints. And then the full version of the adventure has creatures that you could encounter in the forest. They can be mini encounters with a bear and a wolf. They're kind of like previews of the final encounter with the snail. But in short, you guys did a great job. Oh, and for the snail, there's also the behaviors that you missed are there is a subterranean behavior that you can unlock if you actually manage to follow into its cave. And then in its cave, Daniel, you'll be happy to know that you can unlock the mating behavior. There is a second snail on there as well. If you play your cards right,
mate.
It's pretty hard to unlock. It's especially if you don't have a guardian in the party.
They're very private. I could see where having other party members will help you unlock those things and how you kind of have to coordinate. I thought that was really cool for folks who want to try this adventure, whether it would be on like remotely on Discord or through a VTT like Albert Rodeo, or even in person. Where can they find this adventure? Where can they learn more about Mappa Mundi, Jeremy?
So you can go to 3sailstudios.com, which is our website. You can also just Google Mappa Mundi RPG, and you can find this pre-release guide, which is available for free. The adventure Root and Branch is in here, along with all the rules that we use to play. If you want to use a VTT, I mean, obviously we didn't use a VTT because you don't really need one for this game in my eyes. But if you want to, we have a tabletop simulator mod that lets you have all the cards and flip them as you want and play with them however you desire. By the time the game is released, we're going to also look into stuff like Roll20 and whatnot, and along with other VTTs. But the best way to learn more about the game is also by joining the 3 Sail Studio Discord, which is growing every day. You can ask us questions on mechanics. You can see previews of new artwork, new monsters, new creatures, new regions of the game as we're writing out the lore. And so, there's a lot more stuff coming. So once again, just go to 3sailstudios.com or just Google Mappa Mundi RPG.
Nice. And we're going to put all of the links to like Drive Through RPG, the Itch, 3 Sail's website, the Discord server. We're going to put all of that in the show notes, so everybody will be able to get access to this. And if you're curious about more Mappa Mundi and you are a member of the Asians Represent Discord, please let us know if you have any questions. We'll take those down and we'll cover them on the episode where Jeremy and I just kind of have that sit down and talk more about Mappa Mundi and inspirations behind it. That said, Jeremy, that was awesome. Thank you so much for running that.
You guys were awesome. Thank you guys
for joining us. This was a lot of fun. I'm super excited to actually play it. I saw the piece of art for the snail like months ago. George sent it to me a while back. And I was like, oh, that's the one he sent me. And it was like, oh, that's so cool. So I'm excited to actually have played it now to see how it all works out. Because I have purposefully avoided reading through any of this because I knew we were going to do this. And so I wanted to be exposed to it as, somebody would at like a convention, because I know you folks played a lot at like UK Games Expo.
We did
like
a lot at UK Games Expo, but now you see how it is, and if you want to, you can read through and see more of the mechanics, check out some of the other classes, and get a sense. I know Kat has done a little bit of reading into the book as well, but once again, the final version of this is about 100 pages. It's pre-release. The final version is going to be 200 pages. Got a lot more lore, 10 regions inspired from all the main parts of Eurasia, from Western Europe to the Middle East to Southeast Asia. So there's plenty of room for any sort of role-playing campaign you want to, and lots of mythological creatures that are just really, really cool.
I'm super excited. And are you folks are going to crowdfund the
yes, final crowdfunding. Yeah, final crowdfunding will be in February 2025. The full book will pretty much, I mean, it's meant to be done by the time we crowdfund. I think we're going to be able to achieve that. So by the time we crowdfund, the book will be finished. And there'll be a pretty fast turnaround time getting the book into players' hands.
That's how the best crowdfunding campaigns go.
So yeah, we're making great progress. I just finished the lore for one of our Southeast Asia inspired regions, so it's definitely, the final product is going to be beefy, I think.
I'm excited. I'm excited. Can't wait. That said, we have some housekeeping for Agents Represent. Now, this system was very forgiving to our many failed die rolls. If you don't want to end up like Kat and you want to have successful die rolls, you're going to have to use Dice Envy. So head to diceenvy.com/AZNSrepresent and use the code AZNSrepresent to get 10% off your order. That may be changing in the future. We may be a bigger discount. Who knows? Dice Envy apparently they love Drew. And of course, if you've already purchased from them and you can't use that discount code, you can support us in other ways. If you want ad-free audio and video of Agents Represent, and if you want video of No Dice, No Problem, head to patreon.com/AZNSrepresent. Special shout out to our most honorable patrons, Stefan, Michelle, Metalweave Games, Valorous Games, and the most honorable Epic Impulse. Alongside our other patrons, you folks, empower us to strive to have a positive impact on the industry, and make cool content like this. I'm just super excited for more people to discover and play Mappa Mundi, Jeremy. I'm super proud of you, because I feel like, we met, around the start of the pandemic, like 2020.
Yeah, 2020.
Mm-hmm. 2020, yeah, it was 2020, because that's when we started doing the Twitch stuff.
Yeah,
and then you were not doing anything in tabletop RPGs, and now, 4 years later, you're going to have a crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Your first full 200-page, roughly, indie release. So I'm super excited. Again, 3 Sail Studios, and all of their links are going to be in the show notes. Get Mappa Mundi, play the crap out of it, share your feedback, share what you liked, and spread the word.
Thank you.
That's it. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next time.